how that works.
Sure.
So we're live now. I'm gonna see where the link for the actual YouTube stream is. If she's live.
Yep, we're live. I found it on the YouTube.
Found it?
Yep.
Okay, because I can't find it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's live on your channel, on your thing.
Okay, all right, that's good. I might want to try sharing.
Yeah, there we go. See, look.
You showed me. Oh, sick. Awesome. I just want to open the thing though. I suck. Like, like I actually suck.
You're forgiven.
Every time someone comes on my channel, they're just like, "Oh, she's so incompetent. Like, she can't do anything."
No, that's not true. Besides, we don't have that many people watching, and I will pull up the live chat on my. No,
I do have a chat open on the side of my screen, so I will be able to see him. Like I said, I've never used StreamYard. Like I've used StreamYard in the sense that people have invited me onto their streams, but I've never used it for my own purposes, which is why I'm struggling a little. But I'm just gonna open it from my end before.
Hello, everyone. Faye hasn't introduced who I am. My name's Nick, aka Heretical Nick. I'm an ex-husband from Australia. I'm staying up late to do this.
It's okay, we're friends. Okay, so is anybody even in the live stream?
There is a few people watching, but then again, it could just be us.
Okay, fair enough. But anyway, hey everyone. So welcome to the live stream. This is a very different live stream, and I don't normally do live streams in the middle of the weekday. I usually do my live streams on Sunday. But I have a guest with me today, and I'm testing a software. So two birds. So this is my friend Nick from Aussie land, and it is morning where I am, but it's very dark where she is, so we're very grateful.
I'm from the future.
Huh?
I'm from the future.
You are from the future. I was telling her this yesterday because I kind of hit her up last minute and I was like, hey, do you want to live stream tomorrow? She was like, yeah, sure. Well, actually, I said, do you want to record something tomorrow? And then today I said, we're live streaming.
40 minutes notice, by the way, guys. This is 40 minutes.
I told her, you have 40 minutes to get ready. And she was like, okay, well, I guess I'm getting ready for this. But yeah.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt. I will be commenting in the chat as my actual YouTube channel, which is X-Cult Live. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Feel free to shill your stuff. We love that. But I think the last time that we spoke on the phone, I was a crying mess, and hopefully and this will not be a repeat of that. But Nick and I have a lot of shared experiences, I feel like, and yesterday was International Atheist Day, and quite a few organizations, so like CEMB, EXMNA. I don't know if the EXSMA, is that the Australian one? Yeah?
Yeah, no, we didn't do anything because I was like, we're all in isolation. We gotta to leave our homes. We can't have gatherings. So y'all, it's canceled.
But yeah, we launched a bunch of campaigns about shunning. So I thought we would talk about that today a little. I don't want to focus too much on the sad stuff. And this might just be a revelation of what my mental state is like. Everyone who follows me on this channel knows that we messed up in here. But for me, I think in times of struggle, what I like to do is I reserve like sadness and grieving and stuff like that for later, like when I'm fine. and we're out of the woods. So while we're in like a challenging situation where there's literally nothing we can do but wait, I would rather just try and be as happy as possible and do positive things, and just keep moving forward. So that's what we're going to try and do today. But I did have a request from a bunch of Twitter users about asking any ex-Muslims I bring onto my channel about how they're coping in isolation. So we had a brief discussion about that before we actually went live, but if you want to take the wheel for a second.
Sure. So I've essentially been in isolation for about 2 weeks now. My work was very preemptive. So before the government even turned around and said anything, they were like, work from home. And I was like, cool. So the only things that I've really done outside in the last 2 weeks was I did some laundry, which was very exciting. I did some grocery shopping. So I faced the horde that was ransacking our supermarket.
Yeah.
And got my nails done. That's all I've done in the last 2 weeks. I'm probably one of the lucky ones where I don't necessarily have to be like not doing anything because I work full time. So my work, I can actually do it from home. So I am able to at least occupy myself for a lot of the days during the week. I work 40-hour weeks. So for me, the trickier thing is I was someone who had like debilitating social anxiety and mild agoraphobia. Like I've only in the last maybe 6 months been able to actually go into a grocery store and buy groceries. Yeah. And so now it's taken me a long time to actually be confident to do that. And now with the horde, I'm so uncomfortable going into grocery stores and trying to do that. So I've had to have someone come with me the last couple of times I've gone shopping just so that I don't have an anxiety attack.
Yeah. No, I feel that. But I think for me, it's the opposite. Like I'm often very, very uncomfortable in my home. So this is like hell for me. I've been uncomfortable in my home since because I've moved so many times. So after leaving my father's house, it's been like 8 different moves, sometimes after a long period of time, sometimes after a really short period of time. So for me, it's very, very difficult for me to get comfortable in a space, but I've been here for over a year and I've tried. So I've made it a little more homely. Like I've bought furniture, I've bought things that I like to make myself feel like, okay, this is my home and I'm going to stay here. But what's kind of driving me for a spin is that if I'm not able to pay my rent because I have been kind of let go, like I've been suspended until schools reopen because that's what I do. That's my main source of income. I don't know if I'm going to lose my home, and that's like stressing me out. So one of the things that I did want to talk about is like we both live in fairly first world countries. And there were quite a few requests to also speak about ex-Muslims who have to now spend their time at home with their parents, or are in countries that maybe punish you for being an apostate. And also Ramadan is starting soon in April, so that's going to be an added challenge for those in isolation. So if there was anything you wanted to add about that, please do feel free to.
Oh, I don't know, it's a bit trickier for me because it's been so long for myself since I've been under the thumb or control over my parents. Like I left home almost a decade ago. So, it is probably a bit trickier. I think it's really dependent upon the environment. Just in Australia, for example, just because you're in isolation doesn't mean that bad things have to happen to you. Our government resources are still operating. The police are still working. Youth hostels are still operating. Refuges are still operating. So if you are going to be in danger, then yes, I would highly recommend getting those details because you will be heavily scrutinized. A young ex-Muslim, I know, he came out to his parents whilst living at home, and his plan was, okay, well, they know because they were getting suspicious, so I just told them, and my plan's now going to move out. But those plans are now being kind of put on the back burner because we don't know what's happening. So I guess my advice really is, if you're closeted and your parents don't know, play the rules, do the prayers. I know it sounds, and it's one of the most frustrating things, but what else can you do? Like, what else is there that you can do? Like, you can't really do anything, especially if you are stuck at home. But then I would also suggest reaching out a lot more to your fellow ex-Muslims. And if you don't know any fellow ex-Muslims, reaching out to services. So I don't know if you probably have them in the UK, but I don't know what they're called. But, Beyond Blue is a suicide and depression hotline, Lifeline as well. Like, just reaching out to all those services, because they're there to listen to you and they're there to support you. And it's really good to have someone to speak to during this time.
Yeah.
My only reason why I'm recommending those services over predominantly other ex-Muslims is if you are contacting another ex-Muslims in the same situation as yourself, it can exacerbate the situation for both of you. So because you are both in a shit situation, it can keep you in that negative mindset. So speaking to a professional or maybe someone who's out and not living at home with their parents might be a better outlet for yourself.
Yeah. I've been not really criticized, but kind of pulled short on why I'm making. So since my sort of isolation started on Thursday, I think. People have been kind of drawing me up on, well, you said you were going to do daily uploads, but you're not doing anything activisty. And one of the reasons why is that you want to keep people's mood up. Like when we talk about activist stuff, and I talked about this when Jimmy Bungash, you probably haven't met him, but he works with CEMB. When we did our event about 2 weeks ago about shunning, specifically around shunning on International Women's Day, he was saying that it's never anything positive that we're talking about. Like we're talking about always really really stuff. And a lot of the time when we talk about apostate stories and what we have to go through, it is very, very challenging to talk about it in a positive light. Especially when it comes to me, because my shunning story is just crazy. And a lot of people's shunning stories is not wonderful. I think the majority is probably quite harrowing. So that's why I've kind of kept it light and fun. I've done makeup tutorials and I've done dyeing my hair. And yesterday I uploaded me playing a video game. I feel like there's much more of a need for people who are isolated right now to feel in company, which is something that I used to do when I was, when I myself was isolated. So that's why I've been doing that. But I also feel the need to address it because, with the launch of the campaign around shunning, and I think the hashtags are shunning is abuse and life after shunning. If you want to use those to share your own story, please do feel free to. But yeah, let's talk a little about shunning before we move on to something lighter and more fun, because I have a bunch of questions to ask you about something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, slightly more personal.
Am I an expert now?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, okay. All right. Hit me with them.
So with what was okay, so first of all, because I know you've told the story probably 100 billion times, how did you leave Islam? Also, you don't need to be worried about swearing on my channel. We allow swearing here.
Oh, okay, great. Because I'm Australian, so
yeah, I'm British. So yeah.
So mine's a bit of a trickier one. So I'm part of what you would call the older generation of ex-Muslim activists. So I'm talking, early 2000s, when a lot of the ex-Muslims I interact with were in primary school. So I left Islam at 15.
Okay.
And so that was a big deal. Well, obviously my parents didn't know, but for me it was a big deal because my family were very religious. So, it was hijab at 7, niqab at 12. My mum was making bay'ahs to sheikhs left, right, and center. She was, very much pro jihad, anti-West, which is ironic because she's a white woman. She's one of those what I like to call the self-hating white women. And so my entire world I ever grew up around was Muslim. So because my mum's only source of Islam was the Quran and the Sunnah and the Hadiths.
Yeah.
And so that's all I knew, but I'd always kind of questioned it from a very young age. And so at 15, I decided, I'm like, nah, not my thing, not going to do it. But I knew what a murtad was. I knew murtad, but I didn't know ex-Muslim. And so this would have been 2006, I think. No, 2007. And so that was a long time ago. And then I just kind of kept it to myself. I just kind of tried to figure out, okay, well, I don't believe in Islam, but I have to wear the niqab and I have to wear the hijab and I have to pray and I have to do all of this. So for me, it was more survival. So I know a lot of younger ex-Muslims tend to like argue with their families and be like, oh, well, in Islam it says this, or in Islam it says that, in the Quran it says this. Whereas I was like, no, I don't need to get into a debate with my sheikh of a father. Like, I don't need that right now, because I didn't know how to survive outside of home, because I'd not even gone to school since I was 11. And I, just kind of was plodding along, trying to figure out life somehow. And then when I was 19, I decided essentially enough was enough, and it was a split-second decision. And my parents were at home, and I grabbed my phone and I grabbed my bag and I basically just ran out the door, and I've not gone back. And that was in 2011. And so a lot of people ask me, oh, why did you leave Islam? Was it because of something in the hadiths? Was it because of the Quran? Or was it because your parents? And I'm like, no, I left Islam for a very simple reason. And that's because I don't believe in a God. That nothing started me on this epic journey of discovery. It wasn't like, oh, Muhammad married Aisha, she was a child. I'm like, yeah, I know Muhammad married Aisha, she was a child. Like, that's what it says.
We accepted that.
I was like, yeah, that's what it is. Like, I'm not going to question it, because that's what it says. And or like some parts of it annoyed me. I was like, oh, well, there's no fairness. Like, why don't women inherit the same as men? And why can men marry 4 wives or marry women from other religions, whereas Muslim women can't? And like, I was just dissatisfied with it, but it wasn't one of those things that was like, I need to leave. It was more like, oh, okay, this is my life, just deal with it. And like, try to find a non-practicing Muslim to be my husband rather than a terrorist.
Oh,
to be honest, like, non-practicing men aren't learning to marry like the 15-year-old Niqabi daughter of the sheikh. So it's like, that was a dream, child dream. But yeah, so eventually I just left because God is not for me, I could never really understand God. And I was like, well, if there is, like, from what I'm being taught, this is what a God is. He's not doing those things. Then why should I worship him? It was pretty much was my mindset. So at 19, I was like, fuck yes. And I left, and I never went back home. I pretty much was homeless. I had no job, no education, no clothes, no food. I was sleeping on the couch in a halfway house, essentially. So I wasn't even having a room to myself, and I wasn't able to get government benefits. So I couldn't get I couldn't go to see a doctor. I couldn't, even get like student payments or student allowance. I couldn't get rent assistance, which are all things that are in our country. And I really had to kind of learn in a very short period of time on how to be a normal human being. Like, I had to learn how to find a job. I had to learn what to wear in an interview. I had to learn how to catch a bus and a train. And I had to learn how to do, like, how to open up a bank account. Like, I had to learn all of these things as a 19-year-old who had grown up in a Western country.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that last bit. Not so much the other stuff, because for me, I got indoctrinated because I kind of fell in love with the doctrine. For me, I'm very susceptible to things like that because I'm a very humanities-based person. Like, I'm not very, very pretentious in some ways. I can get sucked into things like different belief systems and fantastical ideas very, very easily. And I fell in love with the doctrine. But what kind of broke it for me was that, like, after my father attacked me in our home, and like literally none of my family, none of our Muslim community, like we had brought sheikhs over to like hold an intervention for him because he was too much and he wasn't fixing up, and the sheikhs essentially just enabled him, and they were like, oh, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. But because my father's a narcissist, like he would always be able to get out of situations like that. But my family was completely aware of what was going on in the house, and they did next to nothing about it. So it was essentially just like a bunch of kafirs and disbelievers and all of that who helped me out, took me out of that house, put me in homeless shelters and, you know, social workers, stuff like that. And I just could not. It was the first time that it hit, you know, they're not just a bunch of animals who are running around doing horrible things. And as awful as that sounds, like, in so many,
they're filthy and they're the kuffar and they hate you because you're a Muslim, and you're indoctrinated that from a very young age. Like, and that was one of my things that I had to deal with, like the fairness. I was like, why is like my non-Muslim neighbor, who's the sweetest old man on earth, gonna burn in hell for all eternity? Yet men who beat their wives just because they say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, they're gonna go to heaven and they're fine. Like those sorts of things I found very strange. I guess that's my best way of putting it. And, you know, and same thing for yourself, you know, like being told, oh, you know, Islam gives women rights before anyone else, and this puts women on a pillar. And, you know, I've said this before, I'm like, I don't want to be on a pillar. I want to be equal to other people. I want to be equal to a man. I want to be equal to literally the person's walking on the street to me. Like, I don't want to be treated like this precious gem or this precious candy or this precious jewelry. I'm not about that life.
I mean, as someone who, like, I have a lot of masculine energy. I grew up a tomboy, like running around, kicking things, chasing animals. Like that was me as a child. And for someone like that to suddenly be told, oh, you can't go out without wearing X amount of clothing, you can't hang out with your male cousins who you have made very strong bonds with in friendship. You know, now you have to go to a girls' school where they're all talking about boy bands and flowers. Like it was a very drastic change of scenery for me, and there was a really long time where I like denied parts of that for myself. Like I think while I was in secondary school as a teenager, I would be the only one kicking a football around outside and no one else. Like it's a very sad existence when you think about it. But yeah, so for me, having to learn all of that stuff, like I didn't have a bank account, my passport was expired. You actually don't even have a passport.
No.
Because
that's how I ended up in Somalia. But yeah, like I can't get a new passport. Like I can't even apply domestic without getting stopped and searched and asked to come into a room. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But guys, I haven't been a terrorist in like 10 years. Leave me alone. It's becoming when I fly domestic now. I'm like, watch, I'm gonna get pulled over for a random test. And he's like, I was with a mate, and he was like, you're not. And I'm like, well, watch. Watch what happens. And so I'm going into domestic, right? I'm flying from Melbourne to Brisbane, and you're not, like you're white, like your name on your like your ticket, like it's a white name, like it's not gonna happen. I'm like, okay, watch. So it goes through in front of me, no issues. I go through. Before I even walked through, there were already 2 security guards, like they'd come out, and I was just like, no, this Gavin. Like I walk through, I don't go off, nothing happens, and they're like, excuse me, miss. And I'm like, yeah, can you just step this way, please? And I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, okay, so you stand there, you do like the Jesus cross thing, you stand there and it like zooms on you, and they're like, you just come into this office, like, where are you going? I'm like, Brisbane. That's what my ticket says. Oh yeah, what's your plan? It's Christmas holidays. Oh, okay, who are you gonna see? Where are you staying? And I was like, guys,
it's not just brown people. Islamophobia is everywhere.
I'm right. Like, okay, then I was a blonde.
Yeah.
But like I'm Indian now, and it's like, guys, no. But yeah, so it's actually quite tricky for me to get a passport now, because my passport. So when my mother converted to Islam, she changed my name from my birth name to a very Arabic name, and so I can't. So my passport's in that, but I have no other documentation that's in that name. So I can't even prove, like, I could, everything on there matches, like my birth date, my photo, everything matches.
Yeah.
But that, and it's expired now, so I can't even get it to renew it. So if I want to renew my passport or get a new passport, I have to go and have an interview, and I'm just like, I don't have time.
It's so much work.
Yeah.
Maybe when the Zionists finally pay us and you're rich and famous, they can do something about it. But for me, my passport was expired, and several family members of mine were very, very like, we're not going to renew your passport. It wasn't until I moved to like the last home that I went to, which was one of my uncle's homes, that he was like, yeah, if you want to open a bank account or do anything, you're going to have to renew that passport. So we set that up. My doctor was really lovely. He was like, yeah, your uncle said that you might have to pay for this, but I'm not going to pay for it. Like, I know your family and what they did to you. I'm not going to make you pay for, like, I'm not going to drain you after all of that. So he like wrote me a note to validate that I was who I said I was and all of that, and we got that set up. But it was a very steep kind of learning curve, and I had to learn all the things around a job. I was still wearing a hijab back then. I was still a Muslim back then, so it was like going in my like full jilbab, and
like
I was
full one with like your hands.
Yeah.
Oh, you terrorist!
I was like, my uncle was very against it. He was like, don't walk around on my street wearing that. And I was like, this is what I've got. I'm sorry. Yeah, there was one time when I was much younger, I used to cover my face. And anytime I came to his house, he was like, you're going to scare all of my neighbors, because he's quite liberal. But yeah, I had to learn that that's not an acceptable form of clothing to go to an interview in.
That is funny.
Yeah, I worked at so many different I volunteered like at 6 different places that year in like at once. So I packed my days, I packed my weeks going out, meeting new people. I worked at community centers. I found like this taste for really interpersonal work, which has kind of fucked me right now because I don't have any work. But I love working with people. I love working with old people, young people, children, anything. Like that's my jam. Terrible at sales. That's what I learned working in a charity shop for 2 weeks. I was like, yeah, I can't. Because anybody who comes up to me and this like, is this okay? And I'll be like, no, that's hella broken. Like, you should get that one. Like the manager in the back is just like, why are you saying that? And I'm like, because I can't lie about that. I'm not gonna sell something.
I think everyone can be good at sales if you're passionate about what it is.
Yeah.
So like I've worked in sales and management sales since I pretty much left home. My first job was sales, and I love it. I love sales. I love not just the money it gets me, but I like the fact that my industries that I've worked in, I've worked across a number of different sales industries, but they're all very helping people. So it's not your sleazy salesperson.
Yeah.
It's more like, helping someone with, like, everyone knows this. I used to work in the fitness industry. So, I was a personal trainer, and that's a lot of sales. And then I became a club manager, and I, have been able to do so many those sorts of things. But it does take a long time. When I first started in sales, holy shit, I was shocking. I was so scared. Because I've been taught to be timid and shy, I was so scared to like talk to someone.
Nobody talks about how hard it is to first start talking to people.
No.
I was terrified. Like when I was first. So I experienced a lot of PTSD soon after I moved into my uncle's house, because I'd gone through so many people like yelling at me, telling me I'm a disappointment, like I've got jinn in me, like I'm possessed, and all of that. Like I'd gone through exorcisms, all of that stuff, and I was so scared to start talking to people because I didn't know how people were, especially talking to men. So the first place that I worked at, the manager was a guy, and he was like handing out pamphlets, and he was looking for volunteers for this this community center. And my aunt was like, oh, that's something that you could volunteer at. And I just moved into their place, and I was like really, really nervous about it. And he's like, I know him, we're quite close friends now. But when I was like terrified, he's like the sweetest person in the world, but I was terrified. He's like a man in his 40s, 50s. Like he's the sweet guy. He rides a bicycle everywhere. Like there's nothing to fear from him, but I was so terrified. And also, I think the other thing was, like, part of my experience with post-traumatic stress disorder is that I used to see the faces of people that had abused me to that point everywhere. Like, I felt like everyone was looking at me, and I could see their faces everywhere, and I was just like terrified of going outside.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, and that, again, that's something that's not spoken a lot about. And it's, with like, that's why I've changed my approach when it comes to this activism thing, because these sorts of things aren't spoken about. Like, no. I was convinced that the man, when I went for my first job interview and I walked into the room and it was just me and him, I was like, he's gonna rape me. Like, that's what came through my head, because I'm alone in a room with a man and he's not Muslim. He's going to rape me. Like, that's how I thought. And it takes such a long time to get out of that. And exactly what you're saying, like, because I left home at night, so there was no one on the street. And so I didn't really care about the fact they didn't have a hijab and a niqab or a on. But when I went out the following day and I was outside, I was convinced everyone was watching me and staring at me, judging me. And it comes from the way we're raised, because we have to be perfect. It's not good enough that we're a good Muslimah. We have to be a perfect Muslimah. We have to be better than everybody else. And it's like the smallest thing. We'll come back to our parents. Like, like my mum was like such a big person with like gloves and socks, and she really wanted me to cover my eyes. And I was like, no, I'm not covering my eyes. She's like, oh, but it's haram. You've got blue eyes. And I was like, yeah, I know.
You know what? I can actually imagine someone saying,
pardon?
Oh, you've got blue eyes.
It's like, oh, but they're sexy. And I'm like, their eyes. But it's like, but it was like that. It's like, I was taught to be ashamed of any part of my body showing. And it has taken me years to kind of be okay with my body. I can guarantee you 95% of ex-Muslim women have body dysmorphia. Guaranteed. Because we're taught to be ashamed of our bodies, but we're then also judged on our bodies. Like, and it's not from a way of like from other women, it's from our mothers, or the women in our life. And in some cases it can be from our fathers. But I can tell you the amount of times my mom called me a whore for wearing jeans under my abaya.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like, my mum very much adopted the Somalian clothing, so the batis and the dirats, which are the dresses. Yeah. And she's like, why do you wear them? I'm like, it's a sack. I don't want to wear it. Like, I'm Australian. I want to wear skirts. And then she was like, we'll make a concession. You can wear salwa khamis. And I was like, okay. But she was like, no. She would take my pants away and I would have to wear a skirt. So I'd wear the salwa khamis top and I'd have to wear a skirt underneath. And I was always having to wear skirts, and I was always having to wear long shirts at home, and I couldn't have like my top of my chest showing. And it breeds this kind of like feeling of nakedness. But it's like I think it was Nurvardia. She made a tweet about it. She's like, did we feel weird with that? And I'll be honest though, I didn't feel like.
So it wasn't. She asked, did we feel like it was still on our heads?
Yeah.
You know what? When I answered that question, when I first took it off, because I had intentionally taken it off, I was constantly aware that I wasn't wearing one. Like every second.
You're constantly checking it. You're taught to constantly make sure your hijab is pulled forward, your niqab is on, and your abaya is there, and you're constantly be checking it. So when I had it off, I was aware of it. I mean, like I said, I was aware of it because it was the middle of winter. And I was like, my ears are cold, because I cut my hair off really short as soon as I left home. I was like, straight to a pixie, and I'm like, my ears are cold.
God, did you do that as well?
Yeah, I like cut all my hair off, because mom would always be like, mashallah, you've got such long hair. When you get married, your husband will love it. And I would be like, ew.
It's like looking into an Aussie mirror right now. Like, I can't. I think so. What you were saying before, my mom and like my nuclear family, we kind of lived like we lived in Bangladesh, but in the UK. So we like cooked our own food, we made our own clothes, we slaughtered our own animals. Like,
Literally?
yeah, like
Okay.
we lived pretty hardcore. So I didn't actually have like English clothes growing up. The only like English clothes that I had would have been like uniforms for school when I was really, really young. But then when I went to Islamic school, we only had to wear like abayas and headscarves. And then I upgraded to a jilbab, which was even easier. You just throw it on and you leave the house. But after I left, I wanted to have like I wanted to know how to dress, but I was still Muslim at the time, and my uncle was very adamant. Like he was like, "You are not wearing that giant fucking Dementor sack around the street. We're not having that." And I'm like, "Okay, but what do you want me to wear?" And like my aunt was like, "Oh, you can wear like a dress with trousers," and I was like knowing that now, I'm like, that's a little ridiculous, but back then it was like, oh yeah, of course, that's what you would wear. So I went through a lot of different styles. I went through like a lot of flannels, a lot of like knee-length dresses with like not even leggings, with like trousers, because the clothes can't like stick to your legs. And I've actually had a really hard time knowing to like dress well. Like I didn't know how to dress well, especially for my body type, because I always used to buy like bodycon stuff, and it's just awful because I'm like apple shaped. I'm like a square.
Yeah.
So for me, like I have assets. Y'all have seen my Instagram, but I didn't know how to dress. I did not know how to dress well, and it took me a long time to figure it out. And I just feel like something that my closest friend, who is a non-Muslim, not an ex-Muslim at all, and something that she notices the most is that it's almost like you're a teenager just trying to figure out normal things the rest of us have already figured out. And I was like, yeah, because I didn't get to live as a teenager. So like my first crushes, like the way that I dress and things like that, it's all very, very new to me. And she finds it absolutely hysterical, because it's almost like she has a little sister now who's just constantly coming to her like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this guy? Like, he's great, right? And she's like, no, that man is terrible. Like, you can't date that.
I think it's quite true. Like, it took me a long time. Just something I'm actually really curious to ask you is, did you feel that when you first left that you were very much, you just kind of would change your style? Like you'd like something and someone else would critique it, and then you'd find yourself not wanting to do it anymore?
So sorry, I'm just grabbing my charger. In my life, I had a lot of women around me. So there were my father's sisters. There was my mom, obviously. But my mom, I feel like she constantly she was constantly projecting on what she thought I should be, because she didn't get to do all the things that she wanted to do. And what ended up happening, because my mom was quite highly educated in Bangladesh, she like did her degree, and then she got married to my dad, essentially to just move to the UK. What happened with her was that she just projected a lot of things. So like she put me into Bengali schools. She dressed me like, she would make all of my clothes. So I was essentially like her little doll. So she used to do that. But with my aunts, just like what you said with like the body dysmorphia, is that not only are you made to cover, you're also made to feel like your body is in your own. So I was never allowed to cut my hair. I was allowed to wear kohol, and that was it, like eyeliner, and that was it. I had makeup at home that I used to like play with while I was at home, but I could never wear it outside, not for the life of me, not to any events. And then like my aunts would always tell me off, like whenever I went to a wedding in my giant jilbab and no makeup, they were like, why did you dress like this to the wedding? And I was like, because I didn't have a choice. I was constantly told off for my weight. Like, I'm a big chested woman, so they were always like, why do you wear such tight clothes? And I would be like, it's not tight, like the rest of the dress is loose. It's because I'm big.
It's not even that. It's the fact that they can see cleavage, because I'm very similar to yourself. I am a ample-sized woman.
Yeah.
And it would be the same thing. Like, I developed very quickly as a teenager, you know? And so, like, by the time I was, like, 14, I had, you know, breasticles, the size of, like, what some grown women don't even get. And I would go from, like, and my clothes were getting too small for me. And my mom would be like, "Oh, Ab, you're being shameful. You're doing this." And I'm like, it's
for my mom, it wasn't even cleavage. It was just like the shape of my boobs, because she would always do like this circle neckline, right? And she would be like, "Oh, you have to wear like a scarf around it, even when your dad's at home, because it's." We used to call it shorom, like it's shameful.
Yeah.
And
yes, I was never like, oh my god, if I was like, I would be able to wear skirts, but I had to wear pants under my skirts.
Yeah, because like
So
if the wind blows.
And I was like, oh my god, like, and you're taught very much to do that, but I feel like I kind of, you know, let's kind of flip this and bring it onto the bright side. Like, I've gone through so many fashion choices and like fashion styles, and my hair, like, I think it's kind of something that I know I've got like this sort of stuff that can go for such a long time, but I feel like I've done so much stuff with my hair. Like, I've had super short pixie, I've had like the Miley cut, I've had really long hair. I think in the time that I've been doing this, I've gone from very short black hair to long blue hair to a blonde hair to red hair, back to brown to like ginger fringe. So I've really learned to explore all of that. I went through, like, clothing wise, I used to, because I was forced into skirts so much, I used to hate dresses and hate skirts and hate that. So I used to only wear shorts and jeans and t-shirts when I left home. It's only been maybe in the last, I would probably say 2 years, maybe a year and a half, where I've really come into my style. And I felt, and the reason why I didn't get, like, I've always appreciated my style of clothing that I wear nowadays, but I've always still kind of felt judged by it. Because, I mean, you'll probably have seen like pictures of me. I'm very preppy. I'm very like short skirts, blazers. Like, I'm very much gossip girl. Like, that is,
it's a good look. I like it.
Thank you. But like, and I think it is also because I work in the corporate world, it kind of well with it. But I used to like abhor wearing heels. Like, I was like your true, like your emo friend. But granted, guys, this was like 2011. This was a long time ago. It was acceptable to have the emo. I was like, your sneakers, your gloves, your fingerless gloves, and your fingerless gloves, and your black eyeliner, and that was me when I first like.
So in 2011, I was like in my last year of secondary school, and at home I used to do like the smoked out like black eyeshadow, and my mom used to look at me and she'd be like, "You look like a cat," and I think what she meant was, "You look like a raccoon," but she didn't have the vocabulary to be like, "You look like garbage." But I will say, I think even though I think even though I lost my family, I've definitely found myself. Itself was a concept I did not have, and like this is what I want to ask you about kind of later. But I've also found myself realizing that I have emotions and I'm allowed to express them. Like, so with same as you, like I did so many things with my hair. I think one of the first things I did while my mother was ill, because I had to take over the whole family. Like, I was looking after my siblings, I was, catering to my father, all the rest of my extended family. Like, I'm the oldest granddaughter as well. So I was doing anything and everything, and I like cut my hair super short. I was like this, like half of this, and my mom saw it and she was like, because my hair was like down to my butt before, like it was really long, and she saw me and she was like, "Did you cut your hair?" And I was like, "No, what do you what do you think?" she was like, why did you do that? And I was like, I just got sick of taking care of it. I got sick of taking care of it. And she was like, oh, well, you could have asked your aunts or like somebody else. And I was like, no. It's gone now and it's over. Like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. But so one of my closest friends now, I made friends with her soon after I moved to my uncle's house. And like, we're still the closest of friends. And I feel like we've gone through so many phases together because she's a year or so older than me. So she looks completely different now to how she did when I first met her. And we went through so many different like fashion journeys together because her hair was like super short and now it's like really long. So her hair was like this boy pixie cut and she had like green in it and it was so cool. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to dye my hair like a bunch of colors. And we've seen all the iterations of those colors. And I think what's good about like having a bias against all styles from an early life is that now I don't have a bias against any style. Like I love all of them. I think they're all so fun and cute. Like I don't have like any kind of prejudice towards a style and I can just assume it and it's great because I can have fun with it. And yeah, I feel like I've gone through so many phases. Like last year I had a phase where I just wanted to wear a fur coat all of winter everywhere. And not only that, but also wear sunglasses indoors. And that was my attitude for all of winter. Everyone hated me. I looked like a walking asshole. Like
I love it. Because I look like a walking asshole most times. Like, you don't understand how empowering it is. You've probably experienced it when you're in your walking asshole outfit.
Yeah.
But that moment, like when you're walking and people move, it's like, yes.
Oh my God. This is why I also want to get like a big dog, like a big, scary looking dog that is only loyal to me. Like I want a very specific kind of dog. It's so that people part when I walk, you know, like people will move away from me because I have so this is what I say in a lot of podcasts is that I love everybody, but I don't like everybody. Like I hate everybody. But yeah, I think that going through different iterations of fashions has really opened up. Music is another thing, like because I didn't have a
everything.
I love everything. It's like opened a whole new world for me. My close friend that like unless you come here, I feel like you'll never get to meet him. He's like my soulmate, but he works closely with ex-Muslims as well. He like films all our stuff. His name is Carl and he's like really into his music. So whenever I go over to his house, and I miss him a lot now in isolation, but whenever I go over to his house, it's always like a different genre of music that he's just exposing me to, and I'm just sitting there like studying it, and he's like, you know, you can move around, do other stuff while you're listening to me. I was like, no. I'm like, this is the thing that I'm doing right now. I'm just listening to this. And it's just
because I was never allowed to listen to music growing up. Like my music was nasheeds, like it's for Allah, nothing but Allah, but is the beginning of Bismillah or
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
And then as I grew up, it was more like jihadi ones, so like Sanahudu Ma'arik, like those type of.
What about? I've forgotten how it goes, but I loved that song, and it's all about like, Sanahudu, and also something like that.
That's what I was allowed to listen to. Like my parents, again, this is going to show my age, but like I was not allowed to listen to Soldiers of Allah or like
786.
Like they were like no, because they like even what's that one that had the song Hasbi Rabbi Jalala? That guy, I wasn't allowed to listen to them because they had like musical instruments.
Yeah,
but
I'm not gonna lie, Sami Yusuf, it wasn't that bad. Zayn Bika killed me. I hated that so much. Anytime, because my sister, because obviously she went through the same thing. She was like 10 years younger than me. She would play them around the house all the time because all she really wanted to do was play like Frozen songs, but she wasn't allowed to do that. So she would play like Zayn Bika songs around the house, and I'm just sitting there like, this is never gonna leave my brain. That man's annoying, fucking noisy ass fucking voice.
It was actually recently, I was trying to show someone nasheeds. Actually, I know we're going a bit off topic, but I was showing someone some nasheeds, and do you know what nasheed came to me, and it just drove me up the fucking wall?
What?
The Ali Warnsby one about the veil. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So The one that says, it's the spoken word one. I'm going to find it. Oh, my God. I found it the other day and I was like, this pisses me off. Like the other ones, like, it's for Allah. Like, that's fine. Or, like, those ones there. You don't know that one?
No, I know that one.
Everyone in the message knows that one. But yeah, so like I was like, I was reading this and then I was actually looking at the lyrics of the song. Yeah. And it made me so mad. And it goes, they say, oh, poor girl, you're so beautiful, It's a shame that you cover up your beauty so. She just smiles and graciously responds reassuringly. This beauty that I have is just one simple part of me. This body that I have, no stranger has a right to see. These long clothes, this shawl I wear ensure my modesty. Faith is more essential than fashion, wouldn't you agree? And I was just like, I was just reading
Vietnam flashbacks. Like, I'm having the Vietnam flashbacks.
Like that's what I was growing up around, and then my parents discovered like Ahmed Bukhatir, and so like we'd listen to him at home, but I never listened to like
he was another one that had like that nasally voice that I couldn't get behind. Dawood Wonsby Ali I didn't mind too much because like he had a nice voice. Yusuf Islam I didn't mind too much, but it was Zayn Bika and it was Ahmed Bukhatir. Like I could not. They used to.
My parents loved Ahmed Bukhatir. Like. No one's business. Like his song, "The Last Breath," is probably one of the most triggering songs ever. The one that's great.
I used to cry to that song. It's so terrifying.
So did my parents. But yeah, so I wasn't allowed to listen to music, and I actually didn't. Ironically, I did not discover music until I moved to Somalia, a Muslim country, and that's when I discovered Britney Spears and Destiny's Child. Again, I'm giving away my age. And so I discovered all these people there, and I was like, I like this kind of music. Like I like music, and then over the years, I've really kind of found my music genres I really, really love, but I'm always open to other ones. Like I am an emo girl at heart. I am an early 2000s rock girl. Like, give me my Falling in Reverse. Give me my Hollywood Undead. Give me my I Prevail. Like, give me my rock. Give me my metal.
I love I Prevail. I love I Prevail. Like, I love my playlist now is all like garbage music because I also like pop that like is really bouncy to work to because I love working in noise. Like, that's just how I work. Sorry?
I can't do silence, but I really gravitated towards European metal. So, like Blind Guardian and Rammstein, like they were my shit. And then I kind of started trying to like check out other genres. Like I'm the only one genre, and I'm probably going to lose like 1,000 followers, is R&B. Cannot do it.
Yeah, it's so like my best friend, we're very different people. Her style is very different to mine, her music style, and I love that because it means that I get to annoy her constantly and she gets to annoy me constantly. But her favorite genre is like R&B, and every time I'm in her house it's just like I'm falling asleep. Like, why is this like, I can understand if you have sleeping problems.
I can listen to Disney songs on repeat more than I can listen to R&B. But I'm also a big country fan. I love my country music.
See, like, people give me so much shit for this, but I love country music.
Kane Brown, he can do whatever he wants to me, and I will be a happy person. Like, let him. Sorry. But, like, I'm also but I never really dabbled in, like, EDM music. And the only reason I got exposed to EDM was in my job as in the fitness industry. So I was a group fitness instructor. So I used to teach, like, running. So Les Mills classes. So that's like your body pump and your body step, and they're very strict. And I had to learn to like the music, and it is awful because it's like remixed versions. And I then stopped teaching Les Mills because I wanted to create my own fitness program. So I had to learn how to listen to music, and that's when I started really gaining like a great appreciation for music, because it's only when you listen to like, when you take the vocals out, you just listen to straight music. Like I can sit in a room and just listen to beats all day.
Yeah. It's
I think,
literally like doing something for me. Like I
yeah,
know a lot of people will listen to music in the background, but I can only do that with pop music. If I'm so like my favorite band, and this will never change. People have argued with me. I have had physical fights about it. Like my favorite band is Linkin Park. Like I love Linkin Park so much. I got a tattoo for Chester Bennington. Like I love them. I feel like they got me through. So the reason why I love them is that I feel like every single song of theirs I can relate to personally on like spiritual level. And like I remember I will never stop feeling guilty about this, because the last year that Chester was in the UK, I said, "Oh, I'll get to see him again." And then he died that year. And I was like, "Oh no."
I've appreciated Linkin Park. I quite like them. I mean, again, my age is, I've known about them forever. Like, you know, Fort Minor days, Mike Shinoda. Like, I was like, these guys are my shit. And I think a lot of people, and years ago when I first started doing the ex-Muslim stuff, and everyone's posting all their sad stories in life, and I'm like, no, let's focus on like the small things. Like, people don't appreciate music. And I think it's, if you've never listened to music, it doesn't matter like religious or not religious, but if you've never listened to music, you're never going to really appreciate it. Like you won't really understand it. Like I can, like if I was to chuck my music on shuffle right now, you'll have country music, you'll have classical music, you'll have opera, you'll have everything in that. And it's because I appreciate it all. And I think that ties into a lot of things, like, you know, appreciating, like discovering who we are as adults is so much more different than doing that as a teenager. You know, we have that luxury of trying to figure out who we are, and we're not stopped like, oh, well, I'm 20 now, I should know who I am as an adult.
I really enjoy this dichotomy of constantly behaving like a child and also being an adult. And like I really appreciate that people in my life also accept that about me, you know? Like one of my friends, so this is, I think I've already told you this, but I'm going to reiterate it here. I had my first crush in my whole life. I've had 2 relationships. I've had my first crush ever last year, and it was the biggest roller coaster that I've ever been on emotionally, because I'm not used to having feelings, because I was never allowed to have them as a child, you know? I was always made to feel like this is how you should feel, this is how you should behave, like we move on. Like I didn't even experience love until I left Islam. It was a big, like that was a whole new concept for me. But like with this crush, like I asked my friend, like, why aren't you helping me? Like, why aren't you telling me what to do? And she was like, because I know you've never gone through this and you really need to go through this by yourself. And I'm like, but it's so painful and it's so intense. Like, what is I don't want to feel like this. And she was like, yeah, that's how we all feel. Like, that's how this works. That's the deal. And I was like, sucks.
Oh yeah, it sucks. Like love sucks. I'll be honest with you. Like I was in a relationship for longer than it should have been. I was in it for 7 years, and we fell out of love with each other 2 years into that relationship. But because the way I'd been raised was, you find someone, you love them, you stay with them, and he was raised very similar, and we stayed with each other. And I could see, it was probably like year 6 where I could see that we were destroying each other. Like we were really, not because of anything malicious, but we were both afraid to be alone. And I think coming from our background as well, is when we do decide we want to love someone, we love them 150%. Like we don't just like, oh, I love ya. It's like, I love you kind of thing, you know? And it's not it's like we are giving our everything we are, because we don't know how to trust people. We don't know how to do any of that. And so when we do take that final step to actually give ourselves everything that we are to a person, it's a lot. And then to have that rejected, like it sucks majorly. Like when I ended up ending my relationship, I think it affected him more than me. And for me, it affected me more because I was losing someone who'd been with me for my entire early 20s. Like it was someone who had been there pretty much from when I left home, because I was in a relationship with them not long after I left home. And so I was with this person. They were with me through all of my journeys and all my ups and downs and all my misery and all my family bullshit and me finding work and me growing as a person. They were part of my life for 7 years.
Mm.
And then I had to come face to face to the fact that that relationship, when I ended it, I wasn't just losing a partner, my fiance. I was losing my best friend. I was losing someone who'd been a constant in my life. And
Yeah.
When I ended that, I was like, I am never getting in a relationship ever again because this sucks. And I dated people, but I wasn't in a relationship kind of a mindset because I was not ready to be hurt again. And people do that. People don't tell you that to love is to get hurt. It is.
Yeah. I think so my first relationship lasted about 3 years, and he ended up breaking up with me over a tattoo because I got a tattoo. Did I tell you this story? I don't know if I told you this story, but he did.
I'll tell you a funnier one, but keep going.
We'll just dive into just dating stories because it's kind of something that I wanted to talk to you about as well. Because nobody seems to be up for it whenever I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really want to talk about why I left Islam. I just want to talk about like my experiences dating because it's a very new experience for me because I feel like my first
what I'm doing on my channel is I'm focusing, like, we've had this conversation. It's what I want to focus on because no one talks about it.
No,
like,
they're always like, oh, this is what's like, I appreciate the content. Like, I'm not saying that I don't. I do very, very much appreciate the content. Like, this is what's wrong with Islam. This is how you can debunk this argument. Okay, fair enough. But like, some of us are just out here trying to live our lives. Okay. Some of us out here trying to learn how to talk to people. Like, we don't know how to do that. We don't have social skills. We don't have a fucking passport. Like, can you teach us something about that? And like a lot of my content is just about like surviving shunning. It's about what I went through, how to handle like financial issues, the kind of jobs you can look for, like stuff like that. Like my first job was in security, and you don't need any qualifications to do that. Like nothing.
Really? You do?
Well, they put you in training. They put you in like an intense training program for 2 days, so you learn how to do the security work. And then they just throw you out into the field and you get your certificate in a month's time. And then you can go and do security either on your own, like be self-employed, or you can work with another company. And, it's pretty minimum wage, but it's somewhere to start. You don't need any qualifications for that. But when it comes to dating, so my first relationship was almost entirely online relationship. And it was a fuck show. Like, he was 11 years older than me. He was an alcoholic. He was a white American Floridian. Like, all red flags, like 100 red flags. But because I had never like experienced this before, like I'd never dated anybody, and after him, like what's weird about me is that the first time I went on a date was after I broke up with my first major relationship. It's like really bizarre. But yeah, like I didn't know what red flags were, and I just thought like, oh, I listen to him and he listens to me, and that's what love is. Like, it's not perfect, like very emo-esque. And then after I broke up with him, I was like really, really subconsciously very, very afraid to be alone. So I got over it like that, not only because he dumped me for a really dumb reason, but I felt like I'd wasted so much time, and I was like, oh, this is my chance to find a partner. So I went like a week from then. I went on my first date. It was like he took me bowling or whatever, and I was like incessantly dating. Like, I was incessantly trying to find a partner. And my friend was like, you should really slow down, but I'm not going to stop you. Like, you can do what you want. And like 6 months after my first relationship ended, I was in another relationship, and then that went on for a year. And he was, well, I was all wrong for him because I feel like I was definitely the dominant person in that relationship. And I don't like being dominant or sub, like I like being equal in my relationship. So it was a really tough choice to decide to be alone, because I ended that relationship and now I've been since. So yeah, and like I think I've kind of come to peace with the idea of I'm fine with dying alone, I think, because I like me and I have fun by myself, and I honestly I don't need to bother with anybody. The only thing that I kind of miss is like coming home to somebody to tell a story. I essentially just want a friend at home. Like that's what I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I mean, that's a big thing. And I actually have, as you know, I'm in the process of putting together my series, and dating is a big one in there because, like, okay, there is no right or wrong way to date someone, but definitely doing the serial monogamous that's a big thing.
yeah.
And, hey, at least you're honest. I was so. It's a very fine line between learning how to put yourself out there, but then also being confident within yourself that to not take rejection so personally, and also to not feel like you're failing. Because I can know what it's like, going and dating, going on date after date after date, and then like them saying, no, we're not interested. And you sit there and like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why aren't they interested? And at the end of the day, it could literally be you didn't vibe. And so it took me a while to get over that, but I'll tell you a funny story. So I went on a date with a guy, and he was a really nice, really sweet guy, and we clicked. And he was like, oh, so what are your plans? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get my start of my tattoo done. And he had tattoos. Like he had like a sleeve on his like forearm. And he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, well, you should want to think about it before you get it done. I'm like, oh, no, I've thought about this for 7 years. And he was like, oh, okay. Then we had a great day. Like it went for like hours upon hours. And then I messaged him in the morning because we even made plans to like catch up the next day because it was like a really great day. So I messaged him in the morning and I was like, hey, did you want to still catch up today? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, why? And he was like, I don't think you should get a tattoo. And I was like,
why?
He just didn't like girls with tattoos. And I was like, at first I was a bit like taken back. And I was like, hang on, no, my body, my rule, I can do whatever I want to it.
Yeah.
And, so I just kind of stopped talking to him. And then I started dating someone, and it was toxic. I was like, oh, I wanted to date the opposite of my ex-fiance, like the opposite person to him.
Yeah, that's what I did. Just like
him.
From one extreme to the other.
Oh, and I was just as miserable. Like my ex-fiance, he's a sweet guy, very lovely guy, but very traditional kind of a guy. He was raised very traditional, for his culture. And so it was very much like men work, women have babies, that kind of thing. And I'm like,
yeah.
And it becomes a kind of like, so I was like, I'm going to go and date. And he wasn't very emotional or attentive. So I went and dated someone who was very emotional. And I was like, I can't deal with this. I cannot deal with this. I can't do people who need a mum.
Yeah. That was my last relationship.
I'm not for me in relationships, and it took me a while to discover this, but, what are you looking for in a relationship? And I was like, I actually don't know what I'm looking for. So it actually took me self-discovery. And what I found for myself, what I appreciate in a relationship is someone who has their own thing, and I can have my own thing.
Yes.
But we also do things that are together, and we respect each other. So, and I feel like a lot of people feel that you have to make sacrifices. And I don't think you need to make sacrifices if you have open communication in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so with the person that I'm with at the moment, we're very much like
comfortable. That was the way you said that. You looked so uncomfortable.
I was like, I don't know how to describe it. No, so we've made one of our straight up rules was work comes first, because I've had to give up work when I was with my ex-fiance, and they've gone through still, and I'm like, no, work comes first. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's weird. I'm like, no, but it works for us. Like, like we could, like, our first date was, I think we both spent like an hour and a half like talking about work. So clearly I'm a workaholic. Yeah, but it's just, you don't need to rush into it. Like, I was not, by that time, I was not looking for a relationship, and it was a very long time of me actually having this person in my life before I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this as a thing. And but that's because I got to really grow to know the person. And some people put like a clock on it. They're like, oh, well, you've been dating for 3 months. Like, are you just serious? Or are you just, and it's like, don't listen to other people. Like, I will be honest with you, do not listen to other people. You know what's best. And if you start listening to people before you're even in a relationship with someone, what are you going to do when you're in a relationship when people start giving you their opinions? Because you've already allowed them to give an opinion before you're in that relationship.
Yeah.
So, and learning how to do all of those sorts of things and navigating those, it's so tricky. And I think it ties into something I think is really interesting, is the stigma of casual sex. And I don't know if you want to talk about it here. But like the stigma.
I so desperately, like, maybe for your channel, maybe for mine, I so desperately like want to delve into that topic, because I feel like even as an ex-Muslim, we're still treated as though like, oh, you can't talk about that. Don't be so like crass, don't be so crude. And it's like, no, I like, after my last relationship, I thought the solution to like my serial monogamy is just sleep with a bunch of people. And I personally, I think it worked, because right now I'm very, very happy in the place that I'm at. Like, I don't want any men around me, I don't want any women around me. I just like, I've gotten it out of my system, and I'm like, good, I'm good. But yeah, last year after my breakup, I want to say like 2 weeks after, because I think I told you we had like a lot of problems in the last relationship that I won't reveal on my channel. I don't want to out him, but you know, I went on just like this bender of just sleeping with people, and it stopped after I realized like people are actually catching feelings for me, despite the fact that I'm telling them that I'm just here for casual sex. Like, I just want to do that. Like,
no, I really want to. I like, that's what I said. That's why the content I want to create is that, because no one talks about it. Like, it is perfectly fine as a female to message a man, as an ex-Muslim female or an ex-religious female, to message a man and just be like, no, I don't want a relationship, but are you DTF? Like, it is perfectly fine to do that. And it shouldn't be stigmas around that. But again, it also comes into, like, with that whole relationship, like, you could make so many videos on about it. It's like, don't have expectations. Like, you know, if anyone who's watching this wants to take anything away from, with regards to this part of the, you know, what we're doing today, is don't have expectations, because when you have expectations, I think I have told you this many times.
And I agree. I hate having expectations.
You're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
So have none. Have no expectations. You know, go out, have a great night, have a couple of drinks. You know, go dancing, go to a club, go for dinner. Enjoy that moment and take it for what it is, a moment. And if it grows to more, awesome, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay.
Yeah, the way that I look at it is that there's one of two ways that it will go. It will go horribly and you'll have an amazing story, or you'll have a good time and you'll continue to see that person. Like, there's no real way you can lose with that. I mean, unless he kills you, which is also a possibility. But
yeah, okay. Don't, like, be safe, guys.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do another.
In my, like, I like to call them my dickscapades, but nothing bad happened to me. So
yeah, there are certain like common sense approaches that you should probably take. But like, we should do, like, I think I mentioned this to you like months ago, and then I never got back to it. Is we should do a series.
So rude, and she bails on me all the time.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but like, I just learned how to use this platform. Like, I got a laptop that I can actually use. Before, it was just me working from my phone, and I'm like, this is a little bit unacceptable. But what we should do is like, we should do a series of mukbangs where we're just sitting around sharing stories about awful experiences. I would love that. Because also, like, as well as doing like the activism stuff, first and foremost, I am an activist, but I also want to move into also being like an online person, and, you know, being slightly more personal with my content, which is why I'm mixing it up a lot more. Obviously, there's not a lot of traction because a lot of people are just expecting like the ex-Muslim stuff, which is all fine and great and wonderful. Like, I'm glad that you guys are here for that. But I also want an online presence. Like I want to be an influencer, and I want to be like playing video games, and I want to do my hair and do my makeup and be a regular person online. One of the reasons that I started doing the activism is because when I tell stories, I can't get past the fact that I used to be an ex-Muslim. Like, me telling you that, I've never listened to music before, today we're going to listen to jazz music. Like, that's not going to make any sense unless you have the context of understanding that I was never allowed to listen to music. Does that make sense? So that's one of the reasons why I started doing that.
Yeah, I like the way your content is going. I feel like you've always kind of been true to yourself. And even when you haven't really felt like it. But I feel like you are someone who isn't afraid to try new things and do new things. I think you're quite brave in regards to that. Like, you're not pigeonholing yourself, which is really kind of, you have to be flexible. You have to be fluid in, this sort of an industry. It was for myself, like, when I met Armin, he was like, oh my God, like, you need to release content. You should use your Islamic knowledge and da-da. And I'm like, no.
He didn't say any of that to me, which just means he hates my content.
I know I have that knowledge, and sometimes I would feel very guilty about the fact that I wasn't writing up, what I used to do, like, 7 or 8 years ago on, YouTube and Tumblr and all my blogs, where I would, be writing like deconstructing ayats of the Quran, and I'm like, I don't want to do that.
I will be completely honest with you. I will only want to do that if I am angry about it. Like, the few videos that are like, if I'm not genuine about the content that I'm making, it doesn't stick. That's what I've noticed. It doesn't stick with me. Like, I don't want to edit it, and it with my audience. Like, one of my most successful videos that I've done on Islam is about Islam and the age of Aisha, like pedophilia in Islam, and that was one of my most successful ones because I feel like I was angry enough to carry it through. It's an hour and something long, but it's like point by point, I'm angry at everything. Like, why are we still talking about this? It's the 21st century. Can we move along? Like, this is ridiculous. But like, I find that like a lot of people have tried to drag me into conversations about different things. Like, what do you think about political Islam? Like, what do you think about the Islamic State? Like, all of that stuff. Like, it's bad, guys. Like, it's bad. Like, that's what it is.
Well, I'm going to give you a really good example. So we had some screenings of Islam, the Future of Tolerance, so the documentary between Sam Harris and Majid Nawaz. And I was, because Yasmin Mohammed wasn't able to come to Australia, and I was already speaking at an event with Yasmin, I was asked to go and speak at the event. And when I do my public speaking, I do tend to, depending on the topic, I do bring in like the hadith and the Quran and stuff, but my way, whenever I do speak in public, I don't use it as a platform to be like, woe me, poor me, I'm a poor ex-Muslim. I do it to be like, no, you're here today to listen to the issues that are going in this community. This is what you need to do to help us. Like, I've always been my approach. And so we will, I'm pretty sure most people have seen Islam, the Future of Tolerance. If you haven't, it's on Amazon Prime.
And we watched it very recently.
Pardon?
Jimmy and a few of us, like UK ex-Muslims, went to his house and we watched it very, very recently. We like had a pizza night where we were watching Islam and the Future of Tolerance.
I was watching that, and so I was with the producer / director of it, Dash, so from Australia. So we were he's the one who invited me to speak at this thing. And so I've come in and he's like, oh, can you introduce yourself? So I was like, okay, well, here's me in like 5 minutes. And he's like, oh, do we have any questions we'd like to ask about the thing? And this one person just kept going on about the hijab ban. And I'm like, well, I don't support one. And he's like, why don't you support one? And I was like, because, and I've explained, I know I'm probably not the most popular when it comes to it, but I'm pretty sure you'll probably get asked this. So I'm going to answer it anyway before someone asks. The reason why I don't support a niqab ban or a hijab ban is that if you did do something like that, the daughters, the women who are forced to wear hijab will not be allowed to leave their homes. And I would rather see someone wearing a hijab at school than be taken back to some backwater like Bangladesh or Somalia. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I have tried to explain this so many times.
Like, oh, well, we need to talk to the scripture. I'm like, you're going after scripture is not going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
You do this, you're going to make hundreds upon thousands of young Muslim women and ex-Muslim women and girls
vulnerable.
Isolated. And then his party like kind of was like, well, you know, you're talking about this one girl. And I'm like, it's all of them. It's not one girl.
It is.
He just like going at me. And I was like, there's a reason why. And it just reminded me why I do not talk about these sorts of things, because I get frustrated because people don't do this. And I've had this same conversation with someone where I turned around and it never aired. This video podcasting never went live because I ripped him to shreds, and he kept saying, well, I support it. I'm like, you know what? You come back to me after you've worn the niqab for 12 years, been deprived of an education, then you tell me we can ban the niqab. I said, then you can have a part in this conversation. But when you haven't been deprived of an education, and the only way you were able to get that education was by wearing a niqab, and he's like, oh, but we can get the authorities. I'm like, they can't. If the authorities can't protect us now, how will they protect us when they put the ban in place?
I would say this for sure. Like, even in the UK, which is a first world country, which has, you know, a running social care system, okay, even with children who are the most vulnerable people in the country, in the world, arguably they are the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, only 1 in 8 cases are reported and taken care of. Only 1 in 8. Like, you cannot rely on the social care systems, especially if they're underfunded, to take care of those things. And like, I always find that it's like men who obviously have the best of intentions, but don't understand that, like, it's because it's not a choice to wear it, because you are indoctrinated into wearing it and you are essentially put into it. You aren't going to have the foresight to be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely just fine with the government banning it. Like, that's never how it's going to work.
That's not how.
So I've had that argument.
By the way, I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me. By saying that you don't support a burqa ban doesn't mean that you support the hijab or forced veiling. This is not what it's two separate things. I dislike the niqab with a passion. No one should be forced to wear it. But I also don't support the ban banning people from wearing it, because at the end of the day, it comes down to someone's choice.
Yeah. And like the idea of telling women how to dress, like it's the same thing ultimately. Like, if that woman really wants to cover her head, I'm not going to be like, no, you can't wear that. You know, she's an adult woman. She can choose what she wants to wear. And like, we didn't come to a place of freedom to limit other people's freedom. Like, that's just never how it's never how I'm going to. It's the same thing with speech. Like, I'm never going to say you can't come to my channel if you're an Islamist and tell me to fuck off. You know, you can do that. Like, I welcome that. Be free to do that, because this is my platform, but you're allowed to have whatever opinion, whatever, you know, emotion I evoke in you, you're allowed to share that. So yeah, but I mean, as much as I would love to keep talking about this, we have been going on for an hour and a half, and I would like to open questions for the audience to send us. But if there's anything you want to add, also go for it, because I'm sure they'll take their time asking questions. But yeah, this was fun. We should do this more.
Let's take advantage of us both being in isolation, hey?
Yeah, we could just start a series.
I really don't really have much to add. I'm trying to put together content on my channel, but you know, working from home, yes, it means I've got more time on my hands, but you know, I think I 100% agree with you, and I fully support you. Like, even if I don't have time to watch YouTube, which I really do, I don't even have time to do my hair properly. Hence the regrowth. But you know, I 100% agree. Like, you should never feel that you should fit into a box. And the ex-Muslim community is growing so vastly, and I'm pretty sure you've noticed, and I have had this question asked a lot to me, is why don't you say ex-Muslim anymore? Like, your bio doesn't say ex-Muslim, your channel is no longer ex-Muslim, it's ex-cult life, you do ex-religious stuff. And for me, it's because, well, I'm in a very unique situation in Australia where our entire ex-religious community, so ex-Muslims and ex-Christians and ex-Jews and all that, they have no groups. We have actually no organized groups or resources for people. Yeah. So, I mean, I am in a position where I can do all of that. And I feel, you interact with a lot of ex-religious of other backgrounds. And I'm pretty sure you've seen the parallels, particularly with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, the parallels between our community.
Ex-JW and ex-Hasidic Jews. They have it a little worse, actually, because I spoke in Bristol last year, which is another city in London. We spoke at a university, and there was a guy who had left Judaism, I think 5 years ago now, but when we were talking there, it was 4 years, and he didn't even know English. Like he grew up here, but he didn't even know English. They were only allowed to speak Yiddish. So they have it a little worse, and he went to a school where they would like beat him up and stuff like that. It was awful. I mean, not to say that we didn't also experience that through Duxis and like madrasa.
Like, we look at Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. So these are people like I always like to say, like, as an ex-Muslim, I don't care about my ostracization or the shunning that I've gone through because I'm happy with who I am. I know I lost my family and I know I lost my community, but they don't have my best interests at heart. But they also don't want to have anything to do with me, and that is. But with Jehovah's Witnesses, they can be shunned whilst married and living in the same home as their wife, and their wife will never talk to them.
Yeah.
Their kids will never talk to them. You'll be walking on the street and they will literally ignore your existence. And imagine, it's such an insular society, and they are taught very similar to the way ex-Muslims are taught. But it's where it's like, how we're taught the kuffar, they're taught worldly people. And it's just so fascinating, the parallels between the two. So, that's why my content has completely shifted. And I think if you want to shift your content, that's perfectly fine. Do whatever you want. It's your channel. If you want to dance to some like fancy recipe and go for it. I ain't gonna say it.
My audience would love that. But yeah, I think since the beginning I've always wanted, so like the way that I started this YouTube channel is that my first video was all about how I left home and what happened, like why I was no longer with my family, and that was my first video. But after that I did like I used to be really, really into writing, and I left the community, the writing community 2 years ago because I just I fell very heavily into depression and I lost all motivation to write. And I used to review like stories from the site that I used to write on. So I used to review a lot of stories, I used to read them out, and I'm kind of moving back towards that because I genuinely do feel that my written work is the best thing, like the thing that I'm most good at is my written work. I think that I'm extremely imaginative and I can write really well. So I think I need to focus my creative energies into that, but I'm not quite ready to like dive into, I'm going to write a whole novel, so I'm trying to steer my content so that I'm still doing the activism, and the activism is still, not so much at the forefront, but it's still important to me, but I'm doing other things as well. And I've kind of always done like whatever I wanted on the channel. If I'm not feeling it that day to talk about Islam or whatever, I'm not going to talk about Islam. There's no level of pressure that you can apply to me to be like, you have to do this today. And also the other thing is, because I don't script my videos, and I don't think I will ever get to scripting my videos because I'm such a good writer, it also means that I can sound very contrived when I script things. So I like to keep my videos unscripted, and because I do that, I really can't be disingenuous if I'm doing a video. So I have to be feeling what I'm feeling in the moment. And anyone who's followed my channel long enough is aware of that. Like they've seen angry Faye, they've seen crying Faye, they've seen fundamentalist Faye, they've seen all shades of Faye. So yeah.
Maybe change the channel to that.
No, I like the name that I have. I think Faye the Most Gracious really works for me. I think I like it. A lot of people are like, oh, you should change it, it's very conceited. And I'm like, maybe I want to be conceited. Like, maybe that's just me. Like, I like me. I really enjoy me. Sometimes I hate like my brain, but I really, really enjoy the kind of person that I've become. And I can say for certain that like 5 years ago, this is a completely different person. Like a completely different person.
And you should be incredibly proud of yourself. Like, if I look back to who I was even 3 years ago, like, personal growth and development is such an important thing, and you should never stop doing that. You should never stop developing yourself and never stop training yourself. Like, if you aren't happy, change your circumstances. Like, that's who I am. I should be a motivational speaker.
Me.
What I want to say is, like, because I was obviously part of the original early kind of crowd of, like, you know, the 2014s on social media. So, like, you didn't exist to me, and I was posting. I was doing one video a week, one scripted video a week, and one live show every single week. Like, and I was doing blog posts. I was working full time. I was working in management. Like, I had no time to myself, but I just wanted to get it all out. And then I started getting felt like I had to put content out, and I felt that I had to do it. I had to do a particular type of content, but I was so over it. And I just kind of got burnt out. So I just disappeared. I just disappeared. I deleted everything. So the nullification, which was who I was before, like, is gone. And, like, all my content was disappeared. Nobody knew what happened. I was just like, nah, fuck you, bye, I'm done. And I think I took like over a year and a half off, and I did not touch anything to do with ex-Muslim. I stopped going to meetups because I was like, this has fucked me up, because I'm just delving in so much negativity all the time. And that's why, you know, I put my experience up, and I haven't really and I posted like a talk up, and I did a little vlog up. But what I think is really important now with so many ex-Muslim activists out there is it's important to show that, yeah, we left and we're fine, instead of us sitting there and cycling through the same shit and Muslims are awful and over and over again. Like, we need to show some positivity to people.
Yeah.
And
I have this idea. I have this idea that I want to, like, turn my stories into, like, comedy pieces. Because I feel like it's a more positive way of sharing, like, an awful experience. And I've written a couple of things. I'm not, like, I definitely need to work on delivery. I don't know if you can get a coach for that, but
I'm really great at my delivery.
Huh?
I'm very funny. I don't know. Okay. I'm just like tooting my own horn here, but when I do public speaking, if you read my talks, my speeches, when I write them up, they are dark. Like, they're like, how do you function? But delivery is so important, and I've learned how to deliver. So, you know, I'm very animated. I talk with my hands, but also that's because I've been in the lab for so long. But, like, I would do funny things, like, in the middle of a talk. Like, I'll have it scripted, but then I'll be like, I need to say something funny right now, because everyone looks like they're about to cry. I have people crying at me. And, you know, so one of my talks, it wasn't recorded, but I made this whole thing about, you know, the different types of Muslims that are out there. And I was, like, very animated. And I was like, down the bottom, you've got Samir, but he likes to be called Sam, and he loves a Barbie, but no pork, because that's haram. And so, like, I kind of, I like humor and I like comedy. I'm very much like a dark sense of humor. I'm very much like, you know, I love my Daniel Sloss type of comedy. So
I love Daniel Sloss. I want to marry that man. Like, he really,
I'm so upset because I was going to buy tickets to his show in Melbourne because our comedy festival was supposed to start. But yeah, you know, coronavirus.
I really do want to meet him. Like, I want to see him live. But I need to show you my material if that is the case, because I'm very, very good at delivering a sad story. Like, I'm very, very good at, like, telling someone something very, like, a lot of people will say, like, you're very articulate, you're very good at speaking. And I'm very, very good in conversation, being funny and, like, lightening the mood. But when it comes to delivering something funny that I've scripted, I have a real problem. So what I might do is like type up the material I have and then like show it to you. And if you want to deliver it, that's great. I can do that. But it can be a tag team effort because I'm not very good. What I've noticed, like I uploaded a couple of videos where I'm trying to be funny. And if I try to be funny, I find that I'm not very funny at all. But if I'm not trying and it's just in like the heat of the moment, like in a very PewDiePie-esque way, if it's in the heat of the moment, then it's hysterical, like I pop off. But yeah, that's what I might do. But I think that instead of like sharing these sob stories over and over again, like y'all can probably tell her, like the amount of times that I've cried on this channel, we want to stop that.
Yeah, no crying. 2020, okay?
Maybe not stop it completely because I again, like I do enjoy being real and I do enjoy like having this community to come to. Like this is kind of my safe space, even though it's pronounced to the whole world. But I want to focus more on putting a funnier spin, putting a lighter spin on things like that. And I'm also, are you aware of saf.com?
Yes.
I also want to include her into my content as well. We'll be doing something later this week. Yeah, just sorry, add your last thing and then I'm going to dive into the few questions that we have.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, find your own sense of humor. So I'm a very
dark. I'm dark as well. Yeah.
I'm very antagonistic in my humor. And so, you know, when you're writing about it, I always try to think of what my audience is thinking. I mean, hey, anyone can take this on board, but I always tend to think of what my audience would be thinking, and I bring that into my talks. So my talks are quite personal. Like I do get quite in depth, and I talk about the violence and all of that. But because I know how dark my content is, I know how to bring it back up. So I remember in one of my talks, I was like, you know, I kind of spoke about all the shit that I went through growing up. And I was like, you know, and then I kind of brought it back to and when I'm talking about this, a lot of people tend to think this happened in like Pakistan. And I'm like, nah, mate, this happened in the suburbs. And I do kind of like that sort of thing because it's funny to say it in that way.
Yeah.
Then being like, no, this happened to me in, you know, the suburbs of London. Where I was like, nah, mate, that didn't happen there. That happened like down the road.
Yeah,
you know?
I enjoy shocking people. I think like when people ask me like at work when I make like when a new person walks in because education has quite a high turnover, so we always have new people. When they come in, they'll be like, "Yeah, what's your family like?" And I'll always be like, "Well, my mom is dead and my dad's a psycho." And they'll be like, they'll be very uncomfortable. And then, like, all of my other coworkers. Sorry.
Let's just talk about some funny stuff while we wait for a couple more questions to come through. So in my last role before I worked with the company I worked with, they were like all about dress up days. And I'm like, no, I'm wearing a uniform, but motherfucker, I am not dressing up for Christmas. And so I walked in and my boss was like, you need to dress up for Christmas. And I went, no. And he's like, why? And I'm like, it goes against my beliefs. He's like, but you're an atheist. I'm like, exactly. And I just stared at him for like 2 minutes. I'm like,
I enjoy Christmas. I'm a sucker for celebration.
no. I don't mind Christmas.
Yeah.
But because he told me I had to do it, I was like, no.
Oh, because he told you you had to do it? Yeah, I'm the same way.
And then my other one, people were like, oh, so you know, what are you doing for Christmas? Are you going to see your family? Nah. Oh, that's so sad. No.
It isn't.
Oh, really? Like, okay. I'm like, oh no, I don't have family. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. No, they shunned me. And they're just like, oh. And it's like, oh, it's fun.
Suddenly it's awkward. Yeah. I think like every time someone tells a sad story in the office, all of my coworkers are just sitting there rubbing their hands and looking at me. Like they're waiting for me to bust out with a story. My work husband, so we're not in a relationship, but people think we are because we like arrive to work together. We have lunch together. Like we're always waiting for the other.
I have a work husband. I have one.
I love him. I think that it's great. It's a great alternative to having an actual husband. Because you don't have to deal with their bullshit once the day is over. But Yeah, he's like he's the sweetest human being on earth because he's like a Chinese guy. He doesn't know anything about our culture. So anytime I'm telling a story, he's like fascinated by me, and I love the attention. He's like, "Wow, you're so interesting. You're like a warrior," and I'm like, "Don't say that." Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just like I love taking that. I love shocking people. I think a couple of days ago, like one of my coworkers, he's like this very he's like a white guy. He went to like a prep school. Like he had a very good childhood, basically. And he was talking about his school. I was like, yeah, the school that I went to, we were basically in a house. And he was like, "You're exaggerating." And I was like, "No, there were 12 of us and we were in a house and we were taught to cook and sew. Like that was our school." And he was like, "Wait, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, that school no longer exists." It's just fun. I love seeing the reactions of people because I think that I have a unique story and it doesn't always have to be sad. Like you can make a funny story out of the worst moments of your life. And I think it's a very like cathartic way of feeling
as well.
Sorry?
All comedians do that as well. They take something that happened to them. It can be quite dark. Some of the greatest pieces that comedians have ever put out have been from the darkest moments of their life, you know. Like when there are some things obviously that you can't twist on a humor. Like I can't put humor, and you probably can't do it either. But like for like my sister's death, like there is no way I can turn that situation around and make that a funny situation. And the same goes to you. No?
Sloss did it.
No, but with like other things in my life, I can definitely bring some humor in it. Like, like I love to talk about things like, when I was wearing a niqab, people are like, "Oh, are you hot under it?" Yes, it's 40 degrees outside, aren't you? Like, hello, it is hot. So of course I'm going to be hot. So,
I think there was this one time I was on a bus and it was the middle of summer and a lady was like, "Aren't you hot in that?" And I was like, "No, I have a ventilation system under here." And
I think it's trying to find that sort of humor is, is really good. So I think my only advice before even reading anything that you've put together is read through it and then think about what people would say to it, like sort of questions, and then kind of think of your responses like that you would come up with, because that's how I normally can make my 15-minute talks not sound so depressing.
Yeah, I've tried to do that in the last few talks that I've given, and I haven't given many. I think that I definitely want to do more. Like I'm just taking any opportunity that comes my way. I'm hitting up all of the organizations to be like, "Hey, when's my next gig? Like I'm ready. Like you want to send me to Scotland? I'm there. Fire me from a cannon. Like I'm here." But like I really enjoy the feeling of like gauging an audience and understanding like where they are. So we're going to get into some questions. So the first one is from Rory, who's actually a regular of mine, and he asks, "What do you think about Boris Johnson's comments on Muslim women?" Now, for context, I don't know if you know already, but basically a few years ago, Boris Johnson called women who wear niqabs letterboxes and robbers, which like. I just want to say he wasn't saying that he wanted to ban the niqab. Actually, he was fighting for the right for the niqab to exist because he understood that minorities may be already isolated and things like that. But he did say that they look like letterboxes and they look unnerving, is what he was trying to say. But that's the context. And what do you think about that? Because when I was younger, I used to joke around like that all the time. I used to call myself a ninja, a dementor, a letterbox. My brother used to he told me, like, because I used to wear glasses as well, he used to say that it looks like you have glazed windows.
No, so I kind of use that humor myself. Like, I remember my ID still has obviously my Islamic name, my Arabic name on it, and but like my old ID before I got it changed had me with the niqab flipped up. So you can imagine going clubbing. But I was with a guy, and he was like, "Let's go to the bar," and I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm gonna have to explain my license." And so we're there, and he like looks at it, and he was like, "I mean, I know it's you, but you look like a bit of a terrorist." I'm like, "Look, don't worry, mate. I left my bomb bag at home. I just couldn't carry it with me today." And I've kind of always had a bit of a humor around it.
Yeah,
but,
it's a conversation starter for sure.
Yeah, oh hell yeah. Like, oh yeah, like I was called like a letterbox all the time. And I'm just like, I like for Australia, they're a bit more original with their insults. In Australia, like letterbox is like low down. Australians are very much a piss-taking culture. Like, you think you Brits have it? Come up against an Australian, we will probably tear you to shreds.
I want to go to Australia at some point. I mean, we talked about that already, but not during Rona season anyway. But
no. I don't think there's anything. I mean, it depends on the context that it was delivered in. Like, I definitely, if someone said, "Oh, women who wear niqabs are terrifying to children," I'm not going to get offended by that because it's fucking true.
Mm.
You know, that's not something I'd be really offended by at all.
Like Boris Johnson is currently our prime minister in the UK.
Yeah, I know. He always looks lost.
He's so. Before he became a prime minister, I always had an opinion, and even now I have an opinion that he's just like, he's this guy who's like kind of bumbling around. He was a mayor of London for a little while as well. Never really liked him. But when he said these things and he was getting a lot of backlash about it, I actually came out and defended him because one of the things that he did make very clear is that he didn't want to ban it. And I appreciated that because I'm also of the same opinion. So, but the letterbox thing, yes, is it dumb for a politician to say something like that? Obviously it's dumb, but like, I thought the outrage was a bit much. It was very like out of left field for him to say it, but also the outrage was overwhelming. Like, they completely missed what he said. So yeah. The next question is, were you scared on your first date? Hide this.
So I always have anxiety. So I hate meeting people. All right. So if we ever meet, you or other humans watching this, oh gosh, we're like in my full face. Don't like that. If you ever meet me, please don't hug me. Please, like, don't even like approach me. Like, just kind of stand to the side, and then I'll be like, hello, and then hello, and then we're done. So can you imagine me going on a date? I'm a very nervous person, very anxious. So I wouldn't say I was scared, but I was like, oh God. For my first date, I can't even remember my first date because with my ex-fiance, it was, we met and we used to just hang at the house, and we never dated. And then he was like, oh, do you want to be my girlfriend? I was like, okay. Such a romantic.
Same.
But dating, I feel there's always a bit of nervousness. And I feel like you're saying there's always a bit of, even if it's not dating, if it's just a hookup, there is some nervousness.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know this person. I don't know what they're going to think of me. I don't know what I'm going to think of them. So I don't think it's scary. I just think it's more nerves.
It's more nerves. I think the first time I went on a date, I was more or less, by that point, integrated into society. So the first date I went on, like, I've only ever been on dates. I've been on hookups that have happened like quite organically, but dates I've always like first used an app. Like, I like to know who I'm going out on a date with before I go out on a date with. I don't like being approached in person in like that kind of way. I am comfortable with physical contact as long as I know it's coming. If you approach me from behind, I will elbow you in the face.
Because don't touch me.
But like, if you're coming towards me and you're like, can I give you a hug? Like, can we take a selfie? That's fine. Like, I'm fine. I'm a very like tactile person. I'm a very physical person. So some of my friends who are immigrants like me, we will scream and yell and push and shove each other for fun. It's very confusing at the club. But on my first date, we went bowling, and the guy that I was dating, he's a terrible person, but he was very, very aware that it was like the first time that I was dating, so he made me feel very comfortable that first time. And you know, I have no problem opening up and like sharing deep, dark secrets, so we definitely did a fair bit of that, and he used a lot of that. But besides him being an awful human being, he did make me feel very comfortable. So actually I wasn't that scared. And also it was in a different city. I had to go to a different city to go on this date, which was
that would be more scary.
That
would be more scary.
No, like I've always had this kind of reckless abandon about going on dates, especially back then, because even though I wasn't suicidal, I didn't really care about dying. So I mean, there's stories that I could tell you that I've told like my other friends. Like I once went on a date with a guy who just wanted me to go to a forest with him. Like, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, exactly. And you won't even believe this, because my biggest problem with that guy wasn't even the forest thing. It was that he was wearing red shoes. Like, priorities. Before we move on to the next question, this is Zara. Go follow her, subscribe to her channel. She's, you know, our wifey, and we love to support her. Come back to Faithless Hijabi. I really
come back to Australia.
She's not. She loves it here.
Why? It's cold.
She's trying to get a visa here. But yeah, go and follow her. I will talk to you very soon. I miss her so much. She's just across the road, but I miss her so much because I can't leave my house. The next question is from Skeptic Muhammad, who's another ex-Muslim creator. So if you want to go and follow him, please do. I think his username is the same on Twitter as well, so go and follow him. But he says Islamic headscarf was recently banned for teachers in public schools in a Swedish municipality called Skurup. I don't know how to say that. I think that's a good thing. What do Faye and Nick think about the hijab ban for state employees?
No,
I don't like the idea of clothing being banned.
Like, if you're going to ban a hijab, you have to ban turbans.
Yeah.
You have to ban toppies. You have to ban
all religious symbols.
You have to ban it all.
Yeah.
And I think it's good in some cases for young, particularly Muslim women, to see Muslim women in hijabs being police officers,
and working, yeah.
And because it sets a good example. So I don't really,
I think,
yeah, like this sort of things, I'm just like, ugh, leave it. There's more important things than like a hijab ban. Okay, cool.
Let's talk about it.
That's more important than a hijab ban.
Yeah, I would rather we started talking about domestic violence, we started talking about child abuse, we started talking about arranged marriages, FGM, like things like that. I think need more of a spotlight on it. I feel like hijab is very much like it's like a symbol thing. Like I don't really care for it much. I think that it's just, at the end of the day, not many people who are working are wearing like a full jilbab. I must have been the only person in the world. But like, I would rather, because me being exposed to women who wore hijab and understood my story, like I have women who I work with now who are Muslims and wear hijab and understand that like I'm an apostate and I've been ostracized. Like I really appreciate that they care, and they're like, if you ever want like Asian food like from back home, you can come to our houses, you can hang out with us, like it's fine. And I really, really appreciate that, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I don't like people telling me how to live, and I don't want to tell other people how to live, It's just a very toxic situation for everybody. But I do think that niqabs, obviously, you should have security in place, like in airports and courts, all of that stuff. Obviously, because like even when I was taking exams in an Islamic school, I wasn't allowed to wear a niqab. Because they need to make sure that you are the person you say you are. And I never had a problem with that. I understood it, and it's, it's a completely valid concern as someone who wore a niqab. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
I agree. Things like niqabs and all of that, like Australia has a discrimination act, so you actually can't ban someone from wearing it at work unless it's going to directly impact on their job.
Yeah.
So, for example, in a call center, you can wear a niqab. That's not going to affect your employment.
Yeah. But if you're doing something interpersonal, like you're a therapist, you can't really.
I don't even think that sense. Like if you're doing like working in a kitchen, for example, and you're in the club over, that is something that would be like, yeah, no, we can't do it. But even then, like workplaces need to make concessions for it. So Australia has a very, very strong discrimination act that makes it quite tricky. So I know niqabis who've been checkout chicks. It's the funniest thing ever. I'm like, but you have to talk to men.
It's funny, yeah, for sure. So the next question, this is from like one of my longtime subscribers back when I did content about like literature and stuff. So he says it's a bit off topic. Has your views on Movellas changed, or is it the same as it was before? Anything shifted over? So Movellas was the site that I used to write on. It was a
okay.
It was like a story writing, poetry writing site.
I think I did that stuff years ago, like NaNoWriMo and stuff.
Yeah. I used to engage in that a lot, and I want to get back into it, but I'm very like my writing is very out of shape at the moment. It takes me a long time to bang anything out. But for a while, the whole site was a bit spammy. Like there was a lot of things taking over. But I visited it recently, and I'm thinking about going back and doing more stuff there because they've cleared up a lot of stuff. And I even wrote them a long email saying that they're like throughout my childhood, as like, well, actually my teenage years, when I was using that site, it was a very good outlet for me to get like all my emotions, my feelings out about different things that were going on in my life. And I'll never forget that. Like that place was home to me, you know. So I think ultimately I'll always love that place, but for a while it was a cesspool of just spam. But
creepy fan fiction porn.
Yeah. But thank you, Luke. I know you've asked another question, so we'll dive into that. How do I escape from a situation that I don't want to be in, but I find myself roped into, and this leads to pure insanity? It's nothing new. Do you want to comment on that?
It's a very vague question. If it's more like, okay, cool, have your friends roped you into doing something you don't want to do? I mean, just be honest with them. If you're in a situation where you can't escape, so like, you know, if you're in an ex-religious household and you can't escape, like, I think if you are where you can be as open and honest as possible. Stand true to yourself. At the end of the day, if people who are around you truly love and respect you for who you are, then they should accept your choices. That's a vague response to a vague question.
Yeah, I think, well, I know this person quite personally, so I might give them a call afterwards. But I think what I said at my last sort of like talk, someone asked like a very similar situation, is that first of all, if you're in a violent situation, do not hesitate to report it and call the police, because it's not worth it and it doesn't get better. If you're in a violent situation or you fear for your life, get out of it as soon as possible.
Yes.
And the other thing you have to consider is that if you are surrounded by people you love, but they don't love you for the person that you are, and they are, you know, coercing you into things that you don't want to be doing, then do you really want to be around those people? I would strongly suggest that if you're not in a violent situation, if you're not in fear of your life, that you make sure that you are financially secure before, you know, absolutely flying the nest. Yeah, I think that it's worth considering and going through like the different things that you are feeling and the things, you know, personally that you're going through. Again, very vague, but that's what I feel about it. And he also asked like, how can I contact you? You can either email me through the business YouTube email that I have here in my about section, or I think you have my number and it's the same number. So if you want to call me or text me, go ahead. So yeah. Is there any other? Okay, so Mike the random guy says, what are your favorite books, fiction and non-fiction? You want to go?
Well, shit. All right, I'm gonna make things easier. I'm gonna see if this will work, but like, I have a tower that's like about to fall over.
Yeah.
These are just my fiction novels. I read. Excuse my messy kitchen, everyone. I mean, there you go. That's a bookshelf that's literally falling over all the time.
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah.
I read mainly sci-fi and fiction. I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I'm a huge Robert Jordan fan. Those my sci-fi fantasy. I've read all of the Star Wars novels.
Oh, wow.
I read really fast, so I can read an average of about 1,000 pages in 4 hours and retain it. Thank you, years of reciting and reading the Quran. So obviously those are some of my favorite sort of books to read. I'm not one of those people that reads self-help. like
I
nonfiction?
have a few books. I don't enjoy them. I have books that people have given me to read. Some nonfiction books, like I've got my bookshelf here, so I can actually take them out. So I'm a massive fan of dark fantasy. That's my favorite genre. I like this nonfiction book. I've been meaning to show this off for a while. It's called The God Impulse. It's about the psychology of believing in God, and it's by Kevin Nelson. So I would recommend it. I think it's really good. I've annotated it throughout, and I thought it was a really, really good read. Right now, I'm reading Carl Sagan's The Demonic, where is it? The Demon Haunted World. That's the one I'm reading now. Someone actually bought this for me for my birthday, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Again, it's like very psychology based. That's like the thing that I'm into now. I love dark fantasy. My favorite thing in the world, like in general, is Berserk. I think you would definitely love it if you haven't read it.
What, the manga?
It's a manga, yeah.
I hate Berserk. Hate it with a passion. It is can't stand it. I hate the anime. I hate the manga.
The anime sucks, but like, why?
Don't like it. Just
why
don't like it. No, just don't like it. I think fiction. I'm reading a lot of so I'm reading a lot of books. So actually, let me find it. It's here somewhere. It's the book that was called what's it called? I will be 2 seconds. I don't know what you can see behind it.
I can't believe she doesn't like Berserk.
So the two books that I've just finished reading are reading Lolita in Tehran, which it's a great book, and Disgraced. This is actually a really good book. So it is about a Pakistani Muslim woman who is raised in the UK. And she was friends with a boy, and she was sent to Pakistan to be punished by her family for dishonoring them. Forced to marry an older man who then like rapes her and becomes his sex slave. And then she returns to England to find out that her brothers have run up like drug debts and everything like that. And she basically gets forced into prostitution to help pay off her brother's drug debts. Yeah, and then obviously she escapes and everything, but it's called Disgraced, and it's by Saira Ahmed. So
okay, cool.
Those are two most recent non-fiction books that I've read.
Yeah, I'm working my way through the Witcher series again because I love them. I don't typically like reading realistic fiction because I enjoy fantasy too much. I use books as a way of escapism, and I'm actually really, really excited to be reading again because it's been such a long time since I've been able to like have books and read books because I've just been so terrified of leaving my home that I'm like, I'm gonna have to leave these books behind again because I left so many behind in my dad's house and I've just never gotten over that. Because they were like my friends, you know, like I had them and they were there for me to escape to at any point in time. Oh, this is so sad. But like, yeah, I'm really excited to be reading again. And, you know, I love my dark fantasy. I love Berserk. I know you hate it, but like, I love Berserk. I think it's my favorite thing in the world. It gave me, like, when I first was exposed to it, I went through it like hundreds of times. I was like, there's so much that I can relate to in this story. But yeah, the next question is from Shane Wilson, who's another regular of mine. Did your parents try to arrange a marriage for you? If so, who was the guy?
First one was when I was 13, and he was to a guy in the UK. He was 17, I think. He was going for his A-levels or O-levels. I don't know what the fuck you guys go for there. And he was... Pardon?
You were both babies. I mean, you more so, obviously, but...
Yeah, and he was the son of a man who is sent to jail for terrorism. He was raising funds. Like, I think he was part of Mujahideen or Mujahideen or something like that.
Oh, he was part of the most.
Yes, he was a son. Yeah. He was Egyptian, I think, or Palestinian or Jordanian or something like that. Okay. So that was the first one. And they just kind of kept accepting proposals on my behalf, but then kept my mom kept going. My mom kept falling pregnant, so that's the reason why I didn't end up in a forced marriage, is because she kept having kids and needed someone to look after them.
Yeah. I was proposed to since I was like 15. I think that was the first time, and the guy that they wanted me to marry was about 26, I think. And I don't think he knew that he was proposing to a 15-year-old, because he looked very uncomfortable with me walking in and saying, "Yeah, I'm I'm the bride." But yeah, the very last time I was proposed to in terms of an arranged marriage, it wasn't my parents, because my mother wanted me to desperately get married before she died, because she wanted me to get out of my dad's house. But we didn't end up. She died in December 2013, and my family arranged a marriage for me in 2015, but it was called off because I reported my dad, and I didn't know it was happening. It was kind of planned behind my back, because I had refused that proposal in February, and my aunt called me in August 2013, and she was like, "The wedding's off." And I was like, "What wedding?" And she was like, "Oh, the proposal that you accepted." I was like, "No, I explicitly told you I don't want to get married to that man." And they had like booked the venue, they had bought a dress, they had hired caterers, like it was crazy. But yeah, I'm so glad those days are behind me, and I can just bumble my way through life and try to find a man or a woman.
While you're pulling up the next question, to anyone who is watching, just as a coronavirus update, Australia has now officially gone into its what we call stage 2. So essentially that means we no longer can access pretty much stage 1 was we weren't able to have like places of worship, cinemas, gyms, entertainment venues, sports venues, anything like that. It is now extended to beauty therapies, physiotherapists, allied health services are being shut down. Weddings are now being cancelled. You can only have 5 people attend a wedding, 10 people to attend a funeral. So, and we are completely and utterly banned from escaping Australia. So that's the latest update for Australia with regards to coronavirus.
Sick. I'm sure one of my friends will tell me what the update is, because I'm not looking. Next question is, what are your... Oh, I'll have to read some of your work. I haven't read a lot of your work in a while, Luke, but that we'll talk about that when we talk. What are your thoughts on an author saying based on a true story when in reality it's not based on a true story? Do you think that this is a fair tactic to engage readers, or do you think you find it misleads?
Well, I studied writing.
Uh-huh.
Based on a true story doesn't necessarily mean everything in it is 100% true.
Yeah.
So it can be inspired by, it's based and inspired. It's not set in stone like this is the exact thing. Things can be based on true stories all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean they're 100% true. It's not a tactic to trick people, I don't think. I think just people are misinformed as to what based on a true story actually means.
Yeah. I don't care either way.
Neither do I.
I'm not really into realism.
Okay, if you're going to watch The Exorcist and think that it's actually really based on a real story, you're a bit of a dirt.
Or the Amityville horror. I mean, I think that for me, any kind of art form is essentially lying, because you're trying to present something in a fictional way. So, be that an idea, an experience, whatever. So, and also I think that a lot of writers will put parts of their lives into whatever story they're writing anyway, because they're sharing their experiences through this narrative. So I don't really have a problem with it as long as the message is real. But I'm not too huge on realism anyway. I'm not a massive fan of realism. It's just not the kind of entertainment that I seek. The next question is, what's your favorite animal and why? I'm very interested to tell you mine, but you go first.
My favorite animal?
Yeah.
Dog.
Dog? That's an easy one. What kind of dog?
Well, I've actually owned a German Shepherd.
Okay.
Yeah, so I owned a black German Shepherd named Hades.
Oh.
It was cute. But I'm obviously, when I move out of this place, I'm wanting to get a dog. I prefer my bigger breeds. I'm definitely more of a working dog. So I love my shepherds. I love my mastiffs. I love my big dogs.
I love big dogs. Like none of my other friends, like one of my friends, we want to get a dog together when we eventually move in together. And she loves German Shepherds, but my favorite breed of dog is Dobermans. Like I love them. I think they're
gorgeous dogs.
Yeah, dogs in general are just amazing. Just why they're haram. But my favorite animal is actually a goat. And a lot of people are like, why would you like goats? I love goats. I think they're stupid and funny, and that's why I like them. And they also evoke like very childish memories for me, because I have chased goats as a child for hours. For hours, I've chased goats, and my mom would
very
tell me
easily amused.
Huh?
You're easily amused.
I really am. I'm like the easiest person to entertain because I find the humor in everything. But also goats, representative in terms of like Christianity and Judeo-Christian traditions, goats are actually an animal that is supposed to oppose a sheep, which is why a lot of devils are like portrayed as goats. But they're meant to be like the wayward kind of bovine creature, whereas the sheep is meant to be like loyal and submissive.
I'm sure I'm born in the year of the goat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're born in
I have my front two teeth are forward. My brother used to say that, you know, we adopted you. We found you abandoned in a goat's paddock with rabbits and beavers. That's why your teeth.
That's so mean.
Like, okay.
I was born in the year of the pig, and I eat a lot, so.
Yeah. Well, we've got a heap more questions coming through, which is always cool.
Yeah. How did your Muslim friends react to leaving Islam? Did they shun you?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I was very smart how I did it. So a lot of people when they leave, they try to maintain contact, and I'm like, no. If you leave Islam, your Muslim friends are going to try and convert you. They're going to lie to you. They're going to talk shit about you behind your back. Just cut them off. So I actually, also I was kept at home all the time, so I didn't actually have many friends. So when I left home, no one actually knew for a very long time because I'd never really been out in the community. People knew my parents had a daughter, but I was always staying at home and looking after kids because I was a good daughter. So it wasn't probably until a lot later and my parents said, oh, she's moved overseas, or she's studying, or she's got married. Like my parents lied for years. And it wasn't until people started recognizing me on the street that they were like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not Muslim.
For me, I was a loner growing up because, again, like I was a very tomboy-esque kind of girl. I was very alternate even back then. And I didn't really make any like really, really close friends. And, there wasn't really much to shun. My entire family shunned me and my community shunned me. And they still like to pop up sometimes in my live streams, sometimes in my comments. Which, just screams to me that they haven't forgot me, which is very sweet. But in terms of like what you just said, like they will talk shit about you and do evil things. One of my cousins, she, like the day that I moved out, like the day that I left it all behind, like I was completely out, like 2018 in October, she messaged me and she was like, yeah, you have a niece. And I was like, what do you mean? She's a month old. Like, I didn't even know you were pregnant. Like, why are you telling me this now? And it's just like a pure play to get me to go back and reintegrate.
That's what I'll do. Like it would have been 2014, I think. So 4 or 5 years after I left home, I think it was. And my name was called out in a doctor's clinic. And these hijabi girls in the front all turned around and they looked at me. And I was like, fuck. So I like stayed purposely longer in my doctor's office and they waited for me. They waited. All these girls that I knew, and I went to like halakazat because I used to teach Islamic classes.
Yeah.
they waited for me. And I was on crutches because I had almost ruptured my quad.
Yeah.
Injury at work. And so I'm standing there in crutches, and it's like all the other girls had left, and this one girl remained, and she was like, I think you should come to the mosque. And I was like, no. She's like, no, like, I really think you should. Like, give me your number. Like, we should take you to, let's go to the mosque now. Like, you've got nothing to do. Like, oh, and I'm like, no. Oh, where do you live? I'll drive you home. And I was like, no.
Oh my God.
And she just kept going. She's like, oh, well, you've shamed your family. I'm literally standing there in crutches. My entire leg is bandaged. Like, my leg was like twice its size. I'm crying. And she just kept going. So that's why I have people like, oh, they're caring. I'm like, they're not.
No.
They're not.
They're only like involved in their self-interest. And like the interest of Islam. Like, it's really, really sad. I'm still like really nervous about bringing people to my home.
I have no one. My best friend, so my best friend is an ex-Muslim, and one other person I allowed inside my house. Nobody else is. And I've lived here for 5 years.
My best friend hasn't even been to my house. Like, it's just been me. Like, I've only lived here a year, and like I said, like, I have attachment issues to it, but she has not been here. It needs to happen at some point, and she's she's not exactly excited about coming here because she knows I live with like 5 other people. But like, you'd think that by now someone would have visited my house, but no. The next question is there a song recently that you can truly relate to? I don't mean just relatable in a familiar sense. I mean, is there a song that you can really relate to on a personal level? Not recently.
No.
Everything in the park.
I've always loved, I like lyrics, like certain lyrics from songs. So, for example, Breaking Benjamin, I Will Not Bow. Like, I love some of the lyrics from that.
That's an amazing song. I love
it's
that.
A great song, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a lot of ex-religious people turn to like that song, Losing My Religion. I actually listened to that for the first time the other day, and I'm like, what is this? Like,
it's not that great.
No, I think it's just because it's just Losing My Religion. I think you can listen to songs that have no lyrics whatsoever and emotion can be from it. Like, if you listen to some haunting music from like a piano or a violin, like that can move someone so much more.
It definitely evokes an emotion.
Yeah. But for myself personally, no.
I definitely haven't. So like there's definitely songs that I relate to, and like I only very rarely go back to because it hits home. It hits very, very close to home, and that's a lot of Linkin Park. Like, we have an entire. Sorry, go on.
Speechless from Aladdin.
Really?
Have you seen it? The new Aladdin?
Yeah.
No, I don't relate.
Not the new one, but I've seen the song.
Are powerful. Like, I will not be speaking. Like, I will, I will change time. I will do, like, it's got some very powerful lyrics, but not that song. Nah.
No. I think that I have like a playlist that's just like Linkin Park songs that I can't play if I'm like working or things like that, because they will literally make me stop doing whatever I'm doing. But in terms of like recently, I've gotten a lot into Lady Gaga, like old school Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus recently. And I've been listening, I've been watching all the videos back, because I remember when I was first exposed to them as a teenager, and I would like, it's so dumb because I would play them and then I would like mute it so I could just see the video. But yeah, or I would take my headphones out and there would be no sound. But like I was like horrified by all of it, but like now I can appreciate the artistry in it. And I think one song that I really, really like by Miley Cyrus is Unholy. I think I like it, and I use it for all of my intros. But yeah, I mean, I'm listening to a lot of pop, and
I feel like rock music, if people listen to an acoustic version of a rock song, it's so beautiful. Like Corey Taylor did one, I think, of Snuff, I think it was. Amazing song. And I feel like if it's like, for example, I think it's like Demi Lovato recently did her song at the Grammys, the Anyone or whatever it's called. Like, that was an emotional song, even though I don't like feel like I can relate to the emotion that's behind it, and I feel like if you have some understanding behind a song, it can help you.
Have you heard "Hurt" by 9 Inch Nails, or I've forgotten the other artist who said, "I've hurt myself today to see if you feel." I love that song.
Actually, if someone does, I do have a song recommendation that I think I put it in one of my videos. I gave you a shout out in that video as well, I think. Clearly she didn't. I gave you a shout out to like your Redbubble.
Oh, thank you.
Is Hold On by Derek Huff. So you know Derek Huff from like Dancing with the Stars, like he's a dancer, and he did a song called Hold On. And it's an amazing song lyrically for any, it's actually a great song because one, I was shocked he could sing. But the lyrics of it are quite hang on, let me find them. So like it literally starts with day by day, every day is a battle, losing faith, a fight each day for survival. She said, will anybody even know if I'm gone? I can't take another night alone. And I said, hold on. So it's got a very great message. So I would highly recommend anyone to go and give it a little listen.
Yeah. Great.
Johnny Cash. Thank you very much. Yes, Johnny Cash is the one who originally did Hurt.
Johnny Cash is the one who originally did Hurt. And I love the Johnny Cash version, not the 9 Inch Nails version. I think it gives it a lot more pain.
Yeah, because his voice is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We have more questions.
Does Nick watch AFL?
I am sorry, Shane. I am a proud Melburnian who has never, ever, ever, ever seen even highlights of an AFL game. Never. It is no. Like I don't get the sport. It's a bunch of men running around in booty shorts catching a ball. No.
I used to be into sports, but it makes me a person that I don't like. I become very competitive and very screamy. Like
I guarantee you, Shane is probably, if he's Australian, he is probably like a Collingwood supporter. Or
one of the things that I used to hold like a really big prejudice for is sports. So if you supported a team that I hated, I couldn't date you. It was really dumb. Like when I first discovered that, I was like, wow, that's really, really judgmental. Like I would just like swipe left immediately. Like no, like the moment someone was like, yeah, I support Tottenham Hotspur, I'm like, out. I don't want you here. Like I can't. Huh?
Who do you support?
I don't support anybody, but I hate that team. I used to support Arsenal, but I can't, like, it doesn't even matter if you support a different team. If you're supporting Tottenham Hotspur, I can't date you. Like, it was the dumbest, like, I realized my, like, petty little hang-ups, which was so funny. Next question is, what memory of your life was a defining point for you to change? When did you realize it, and did you want to change?
You know how we were talking about really dark things before?
Yeah, there was a lot of dark stuff before we were talking about.
When I was holding the dead body of my 2-year-old sister.
Yeah, that'll do it. For me, it was just the pressure mounted when I was looking after all of my siblings. So very, very just like, let's keep to fun stuff. Like I think we've covered all the sad stuff. Yeah. What was the worst injury you've suffered in your life? Did it cause trauma, or was it something you can look back and laugh at?
Well, I've had many.
Same.
No, we're gonna look at like a physical injury. The worst one that I've actually had is one that's still affecting me today, and that would be when I injured my leg. So I used to be a competitive powerlifter. So I used to lift the heavy shit, and I was working in a gym at the time, and I dropped 65 kilos just above my knee. So it hit me on my leg, and I almost ruptured my quad. And that's happened in 2012, I believe, or probably 2000. No, it was 2012, I think. And so that was what, 8 years ago now. I still have a dent in my thigh from it. My muscle is completely destroyed in that area. I couldn't walk for months. Like I couldn't walk for like 8 or 9 months. I was on crutches. I had to essentially learn how to walk again. And because I was on one leg, I actually ended up hyperextending the other leg behind it. So I also couldn't properly walk on my other leg. So had to do rehab, and just not a fun time.
Yeah.
I've had like other injuries, like I guess it depends as well. Like surgery can be an injury, but it can be pretty traumatic. But yeah.
But I do want to say, like, barring my father almost killing me, which is probably the worst injury that I've ever had, I think after that, following that, because again, let's not dive into the sad stuff. Following that, I think that the worst injury that I've ever had is when I twisted my ankle. I slipped on ice and I twisted my ankle. I was out of work for 2 weeks. And I have a very rough exterior. Like I get scrapes and cuts and bruises all the time because I don't care. Like if I slip and fall, like I literally just get up and start walking again. No crying, no complaining, no owing. Like you just keep going. So when I twisted my ankle, I had just left my friend's house, and back then I had a curfew. So it was like 10 to 9, and 9 was my curfew. So I like slipped on this ice and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be late for curfew. Priorities. So I like get up and I'm like, okay, do I go back to my friend's house and ask her dad to drive me home, or do I just go there? Because my friend also lived like a street away from me, so I knew I could technically walk there. So I was like, you know what, I'm not going to bother them. I'm just going to try and walk. Like at that point I didn't know I had twisted my ankle because I'd never twisted my ankle before. So I'm like walking down this road. I'm walking down this road, cold, snowing, right? I just slipped on ice. I'm walking down this road. I'm walking like I've been shot in the leg. Like I'm limping. I have to stop in the middle because I feel like I'm going to pass out. And I like hold a lamppost and I'm like, okay, like 5 more minutes. You can do this. Like I'm prepping myself. There are people walking towards me. They can see me like limping. They cross the road and just start running, like say nothing. They just start running like I've been attacked or something and they don't want to get involved. So I'm like limping, like I've been shot in the leg, like there's zombies chasing me because I'm trying to get to like meet my curfew. And I get back home, I like get into my bed, I wrap myself in my blanket because I'm like shivering because of the shock, not because it's cold. And I'm like, I don't think I'm okay. I think there's something really badly wrong. And then like my cousin walks in and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, can you get me some ice? And she was like, what happened? I said, like, I slipped on the ice. I think that I've twisted my ankle. And she's like, wait, so you twisted your ankle and you walked home? And I was like, yeah, that's what I did. And her mom comes in and she's like, oh, here's some ice. Like, make sure you keep your leg elevated. We'll take you to the GP tomorrow. I was like, no, I don't need to go to the GP. Like, I'll be fine tomorrow. I'll get into work in a couple of days. And she was like, you are not getting into work in a couple of days. That's not realistic. And I was like, yeah, but it's just a twisted ankle. Like, how hard could it be? Couldn't walk the next morning. My uncle gave me a crutch. And he was like, I know you're adamant about not going to the doctors, but you're going to need this. And like, for 2 weeks, I was bum shuffling down the stairs. I was like crawling around. I had the most fun. I was like, so when I would go outside with like crutches, I would be like speed walking with old ladies to see if I could go faster than them and like owing my way along. It was so funny and hilarious. It probably fucked up my leg as well, but I mean, it was good fun. Like, and now I know when the cold weather is coming because I feel it in my ankle. I'm that old lady.
No, really funny injuries, really. I just was like, when I dropped the 65 kilos on my leg, I literally went, fuck. I walked into the first aid area, got an ice pack, slapped it on my leg and left it there for about 2 hours. And then I was like, should probably go to, actually, there was a funny thing about it. I ended up having a seizure, which is not the funny bit. Because when my body, I have like neurological stuff, so if my body gets in too much trauma, it shuts down and I have seizures. So I don't have them too often, but I remember I had a seizure, so I was rushed through the emergency room and like, let's have a look at your leg. My leg had swollen up huge, like it was massive. I had a bruise from like my knee to my hip and like all around my entire thigh. And I remember I was sitting there and I was going to get an x-ray and he turns around and he's like, I'm looking at him like, are you the doctor? And he was like, yes. I'm like, you're too pretty. But I was delirious from my pain.
Oh my gosh. I had a breast cancer scare a couple of years ago, and it was just like me getting in my own head. It's just me being a hypochondriac. But like, there were no female doctors around. My aunt was with me and she was like, don't tell anyone that you had a male doctor for this. And I was like, look, I'm just here to get checked. Okay, nothing is going to happen. I walk in, she's like sitting outside. I walk in, it is the most beautiful man I've ever seen. And I'm like, I didn't shave my underarms. Like, who, like,
I only see male doctors anyway, so I'm just like, eh.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay, last and final question, then I think I'm having so much fun. We could do this all day, but I think this will be the last one.
I don't have to be in bed until 40 minutes because it's midnight in 40 minutes.
Okay. So this will be the last question. Thank you guys for joining us. What is your response to people who say, without religion, life is meaningless? I usually say, well, who said life has to have meaning in the first place? What do you think?
I think people are obsessed with having meaning in life, and I think you can make the meaning of your life. You know, people go, oh, well, you're an atheist, so you don't have any meaning. I'm like, really? How do you know? How do you know what's a meaning of life? Is it having a God and praying to a God? Is that what your meaning of life is? Or is your meaning of life having rules and regulations and this is how it all has to be? So for me, I'm like, this is why people don't debate me, because I ask these questions straight. I'm like, what is your meaning of life? What determines your religion is your meaning in your life? Like, if a Muslim says it to me and they're like, well, without religion, you have no meaning in life. Is meaning in life rules? Then I have rules that I have my own life. I live my own life by. I'm a decent human being. I give to charity. I help people. I'm a pretty decent human being, I like to think. And I honestly think that when people go, oh, how do I find meaning in life? You have to find it yourself, but that comes after a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of people are too afraid to actually look at themselves in order to determine what makes it. People are so used to having a handbook thrown at them and like, this is how you do life, and it's not how it works really.
So for me, like I'm an existential nihilist. I agree that life is meaningless and we're hurtling through space and, you know, we're all going to die one day. Like, I believe that. But I don't see that as a negative thing, because then, like, for me, I like to put a positive spin on everything. I feel like I can always turn a situation around. And for me, that's rock bottom. The only way from rock bottom is up. Like, you can start from the bottom and you can build yourself a meaning. And I also think that part of life is finding that. You know, I think the part of the fun and the thrill of living is finding your place in the world. And I don't think that if that is something that is given to you, you're essentially just stagnant. You've given up and you are where you are, and that's all you're going to be. And that's how my life used to be. And I can't imagine living like that now. Which is why, like, when some people preach to me, I'm more than willing to listen. But because I enjoy having the conversation, I enjoy a little banter. But I think ultimately, I don't ever see myself committing to one style of life ever again, because there's so much to learn in the world. There's so much to take from the world and so much to, fuel your life with and experience. So yeah, maybe life without religion is technically meaningless, but it gives me the chance to find that meaning and find what I want out of my life.
Like, some people are very stuck on ticking boxes. Like, I got into an argument with a coworker recently, and he's like, oh, I'm buying a house. I'm like, why? You already have a house. Like, you have a 4-bedroom house. Why are you buying another house? He's like, oh, I just want another one. I'm like, well, he's like, oh, you should start thinking about buying a house because you're getting older. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in buying a house. And he was like, what do you mean? He's like you don't have a relationship, you don't have anything. So like, what are you doing with your life? And I was like, one,
excuse me, I don't have anything. I have happiness. Excuse me. Like,
yeah. I feel like some people are obsessed with that sort of ticking of the boxes, and they don't want to go too far. So some people may not believe in a God actively, but they still believe that you have to tick the boxes of life to be successful. But yeah. I'm telling you this, okay, this is coming from a professional perspective. This is not even my personal. In my role, I deal with people who have been in one industry for a very long time and are looking at changing into a new industry. And I'm talking to people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And these people, when I ask them, oh, okay, what made you want to do this? And they're like, I've always wanted to do it. And I'm like, cool. But what stopped you? Oh, I had kids, I had this, and I had that. And it's like, wow, you are in the top end of your life, and now you're deciding that this is something important for you to do. Like, and it's because they were obsessed with ticking the boxes of life. And if, like, myself, like, I don't expect to be doing what I'm doing now in 10 years, let alone in 5 years. Like, I could be working in a completely different industry. I could be doing so many different things. Like, I know for me, I don't want children. And people tell me, well, your life will be meaningless without children. Will it? I don't think it'll be meaningless without children. It's people have their own idea of what they think is meaning, and that necessarily isn't the same meaning for you.
Yeah. I find it very strange when people say like, oh, I've done this for 10 years. Like, why? Why have you done it for 10 years? You're clearly not happy here. Yeah. Why do you commit? Like, I'm very flip-floppy. I'm quite a flexible person in terms of that, and I've done a lot of things, and I haven't regretted doing so many things. Sometimes I regret kind of spending my money frivolously, but then I remember, like, there's money in the world. You'll always find a way to make money. But I think that, like, there are certain things, like, people are like, oh, why don't you have a boyfriend, or like, why aren't you looking to be in a relationship? But I quite openly say, like, I don't want kids. I feel like I've already raised kids and I work with kids. Like, I don't want that at home. And everyone's kind of down my throat, like, oh, it's going to be different when you have your own kids. I'm like, how could it possibly be different? Like, it's a child.
My best way to get out of that, so people do not talk about me having kids anymore, because people be like, oh, but when you have, oh, okay. So I turn around and be like, are you really putting your business inside of my uterus right now? Is that what you're doing? And they get so uncomfortable, and they're like, okay, no, that's not what I was saying. I mean, you've just got to be a bit of a dick like me, and I think it helps that I've worked in sales for so long that I know how to do that. I think it's an interesting thing, and it's something we could continue to probably talking on for hours and hours, but it is getting quite late. You are sleep deprived. I am sleep deprived.
Yeah.
So we should probably look at wrapping this up.
So thank you guys for joining us. I had a really, really good time. Thank you for being on my channel, and I hope to bring you back a lot more times, because it's a lot of fun talking to you. We've been talking for 2 hours and 35 minutes. Like, that's a long time.
I'm a bit of a black hole. I do this on dates as well. Like, I just end up talking for ages and ages. But the only thing I can ask is, I have a YouTube channel. I'm very lazy on it, but what I tend to do with my YouTube channel is, I'm not a regular every single week uploader. I am a series uploader. So I will do a series, upload the entire series, and then put my focus and energy onto my next series. What you'll see currently on my channel is my journey.
Yeah.
And a couple of talks that I've given. But if you are interested in asking questions with regards to the contents, you can just, I like how I'm shouting myself out, by the way.
Fine, go for it.
Okay, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as Heretic Nick, and my YouTube channel is X Cult Life. So if you would like to jump on there and say hello, feel free.
I'm subscribed to you, because if I'm not, I'm going to be very angry at myself. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the chat. I'm glad that we didn't just talk about one thing, and we talked about a various number of things, and it was great. And yeah, you'll definitely be seeing more of Nick and more of other people. I have other people lined up to come join us this week, maybe in the next week. So we'll catch you guys another time. Like, share, subscribe, and join us.
If you don't like, share, or subscribe this, clearly you're looking to get brownie points from Allah, and Allah will reward you if you do not do those things, okay? If you don't want to get brownie points from Allah and get like points and all that shit, and like, yes, you're going to go to Jannah now because you didn't do it, you have to do the opposite. So you have to subscribe and you have to like and you have to share. Those are the rules.
This is true. All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.